This is live on stage 17 of the Vuelta a Espana. An 8-man breakaway about to go over the summit of the penultimate climb of the day, a Category 2 that will precede the final summit finish of the race at Peña Cabarga in a little over 40 kilometers from now. Steve Schlanger with Todd Gogolski, glad to have you aboard here on Universal Sports. This is the main field, and here is our Road ID stage profile for this 17th day of the season's final Grand Tour. The leaders just going over the summit of the Category 2, and now a very tricky descent coming up.
8-rider breakaway group has gotten away. They're not far in front of the field with the overall race leader of Kobo. There he is, the red jersey, 36 seconds back. You can see his Geox team all over the front. No real danger men in that 8-rider breakaway.
And perhaps the most important day of JJ Kobo's career, wearing the red jersey on the most pressure-packed of days, because it's really the final legitimate opportunity for his challengers to make a run at that red jersey and try and take away the race lead, as the move is now on for the summit of the climb. From the front of that leading group of 8, David Moncoutier is going to be beaten out at the summit. And that's AG2R's Guillaume Bonifant
taking the maximum points there, but still it was Moncoutier getting second there. So actually Moncoutier will be padding his gap just a little bit in that King of the Mountains competition.
Meantime, at the front of the field, this is Geox riding along with Team Sky. Vacan Soleil and Katusha have also been up there, but again, the last genuine opportunity with the final summit finish for Chris Froome and Brad Wiggins, the 2 Team Sky riders who are second and third on the GC, the only guys within a minute of Kobo. This is their last chance on stage 17 to try and snare that red jersey away.
And the climb up to the Peña Cabarga, 6 kilometers in length. It's not that long. It's just about 4 miles and change, but it does top out at 19%, very close to the top. The climb gets steeper as it goes up, and there could be some separation. Don't forget, 20-second time bonus for the win. So Froome sits 22 seconds down in the general classification. If he can get a small gap and a stage win, he can take over the lead. Geox knows that. The racing is on, the gloves are off.
And look at this descent. It's very narrow, some twisting roads, high rate of speed at various points. This will be very tricky. Here is the top 5 on the general classification. As I mentioned, only those 2 Skyriders, Froome and Wiggins, within 1 minute of JJ Kobo. Walk Mollema of Rabobank, who sits in 4th, says he's just trying to make it onto the podium. He knows he has no realistic chance of winning this race, so his focus is just the podium, either 2nd or 3rd. So really, this is a 3-rider race here on the final summit finish day. As we roll through the riders in the 8-man breakaway, Greg Van Avermaet is here from BMC, Evgeny Petrov of Astana, Johannes Frolinger of Skill Shimano, Olivier Kaizen of Omega Pharma-Lotto. Guillaume Bonifant of AG2R was the first man to crest the summit of the Category 2 climb. David Moncoutier was just behind him in the polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains leader. Marzio Brusayan of Movistar and Matthias Frank, Van Avermaet's teammate with BMC. Those are the 8 riders out front, but just by a few seconds over the field.
A very sketchy descent, narrow roads, and these guys just flying down it as they all are hurtling toward the bottom of the Peña Cabarga climb. Last year, as they set up for the Peña Cabarga climb, it was Igor Antone who was wearing the overall leader's jersey, the red jersey. He crashed in the middle of the field. He was taken out of the bike race. Joaquin Rodriguez went on to win. Everybody knows this is a critical moment of the bike race.
Longest stage of this year's race at 211 kilometers, moving northwest up to one of the most northern points of Spain.
And this is just part of this 131-mile day, but you can see just how small these roads are. And that 8-rider breakaway group very much has a distinct advantage on a descent like this. They don't have to worry about so many other guys and so many other potential problems cropping up with a field this big.
we had a lot of attacks earlier and some large groups forming. At one point, we had a breakaway of over 20 riders. And from the gun today, it was attack after attack, but they all kept getting reeled in. And even this 8-man breakaway didn't form until a few kilometers ago. It was a smaller group. A few guys, including Moncroutier, bridged up just prior to the summit of that Category 2 climb. So that's just how active it has been and continually evolving as the stage has unfolded, as they're up to over 60 kilometers per hour on this descent. They have an intermediate sprint coming up with about 9 kilometers left to go, and that final climb begins to the last summit finish at Peña Cabarga for this year's Vuelta.
The chase from the field has quite a bit been led by Katusha, thinking that maybe Rodriguez can feel good after his crash late in the race yesterday. This is the perfect type of finish for him if he's going well as Vacan Soleil riding for Wout Poels, the man who's been very much a revelation at this year's race and contesting some of these summit finishes.
Well, let's really boil it down. For Froome and Wiggins, the two Sky riders who have the best chance at unseating J.J. Cobo at the top of the standings, how will they use that team dynamic to work in their favor, and how much do you really think that they can do, even as teammates, to try and knock Cobo off?
I think it's going to be very tough for them to do anything today. I think that Froome has a much better mental attitude right now. Everything he's been saying, he's been talking about going for it. Why not? Wiggins seems to be a little bit more resigned in his position. He didn't expect to be vying for the lead after breaking his collarbone in the Tour de France, and he almost seems like he wants to hold on to what he has rather than going on a big attack and blowing up and getting dropped and losing big time. I think the final days from now on, not today, that's when they can use that teamwork more and try and put those guys in breakaways. But on this finish, it's almost going to be the guy with the best legs.
There is the red jersey near the front. J.J. Cobo has looked very good. Won on the fabled Angleroo at the end of stage 15. But ironically enough, some other riders like Jakob Fuglsang, Bauke Mollema, they've said that Chris Froome is the strongest rider in this race. And had it not been for him working for so many stages as a domestique for Wiggins, Froome would be winning.
Well, it's easy to see why the guys would say that about Froome. He has spent more time in the wind than Wiggins has. He's paced Wiggins up a lot of these climbs, and he's still ahead of Wiggins in the general classification. So Froome, there's no doubt, has been incredible this race. As far as I know, he hasn't penned his contract in the last 24 hours with Team Sky, so he still does not have a signed deal for next year. His price is going up every single day, and hopefully they have the budget to keep him.
On a swift descent of the second categorized climb of the day, with the summit finish still looming at the end of the longest stage of this year's Vuelta, stage 17 to Peña Cabarga. We come back to our 8 leaders on the descent of the Category 2 climb that precedes the final climb of this year's race, the last summit finish up to Peña Cabarga, just over 38 kilometers away from the end of today's stage 17. They are really moving along. It's been a very high rate of speed, averaging over 40K an hour for the last couple of hours on a sunny and warm day in northern Spain, temperature in the 80s, and we are now down to 170 riders left at this year's Vuelta, with several pulling out during today's stage alone. David Lopez, also Sergio Palino and Ignatius Konovalovas, those 3 riders from the Movistar team alone have abandoned today. Rein Taaramäe, a stage winner from several days ago for Cofidis, he pulled out during stage 17. And add that to Fabian Cancellara of Leopard Trek, who pulled out at the end of yesterday's stage to plan for the World Championship. So a lot of guys these last couple of days abandoning the Vuelta.
Especially if you look at the Movistar trio going out, that's a huge amount of their team. And Palino was their highest man on GC, coming into the day in 13th place. But now his teammate Broussais is in the 8-man breakaway group, and he's the next highest guy that started the race today for that squad in 19th spot.
There are some chasers who have jumped in front of the main field, trying to make it across to the 8-man breakaway. And on these narrow roads, sometimes it's difficult for the camera on the motorbike to get up and exactly find out who they are.
And you can see here at the back of the peloton, some guys losing a little bit of contact on this descent, a very bumpy, very patchy road. It's not just that it's narrow, but when you have that bad asphalt, it's really hard to dive through the corners and feel somewhat comfortable on your bike when you're getting thrown around.
Every inch of this descent so far has been extremely narrow. It's been single file almost the entire way down because of the speed and because of the narrow roads. 36K now left. So they've done a Cat 3, a Cat 2, and just the summit finish coming up after the intermediate sprint in the final 10 kilometers.
And there's a lot of downhill throughout the next almost 30 kilometers of this race. A few little uphill bumps, but basically losing a lot of altitude until the final 6 kilometer where they hit the base of the Peña Cabarga, and then things go precipitously up to the finish line.
4 hours in. Broussaillant at the front for Movistar. Looks like Olivier Kaizen for Omega Pharmalato now coming through to take a pull. And the summit finish today, interestingly enough, lower in altitude than the two climbs that have preceded it. The Cat 3 and the Cat 2.
It's actually, as often the case, the profile is very deceiving today. The summit finish does not look very hard. It looks like a small little bump, and yet it is a very selective finish because it's so incredibly steep. Almost 20% right at the top.
Averaging 9%. And really most of the last kilometer is well over 10%. And as you often see, some gaps forming on the descent. Some riders a little bit more cheeky than others.
Some guys are just not willing to take the risks on these descents, Wiggins being one of them. He actually missed a little bit of a split with some of the contenders several days ago when he was in the red jersey. And he said he was never concerned that that group was going to stay away. That included Nibali when he was still in contention, Kesiakov and some others. He didn't want to risk it on the downhill.
Something else that can't be overlooked for both Froome and Wiggins is the fact that they were caught behind the split at the end of yesterday's stage, and they each lost a little bit of time. Froome dropped 2 seconds, Wiggins lost 5 seconds, and those sorts of seconds really add up. For instance, if Froome would somehow win this stage today, which is not likely, and J.J. Kobo finished outside of the time bonuses, Kobo would still be in the red jersey without any summit finishes left. So he'd still have a pretty good shot at winning the overall race.
Yeah, sure, assuming there was no gap between them. If Kobo was able to mark Froome and Froome just out-sprinted him,
right,
and they got the same finishing time and the only separation was a time bonus, well, the 2 seconds from yesterday would be a huge deal.
And it was just Froome and Wiggins getting caught right behind a split there near the finish.
A lot of confusion at yesterday's finish, and unfortunately, basically the officials typically don't use, in the race organization, don't typically use a roundabout for the caravan deviation at the end of the race. All the cars have to turn off and not go through the finish line. It confused the riders, and it created a real change in the finish of the race.
And this is out front with 33K left. Still on the descent. Field in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, single file inside of 30K and over 4 hours in on a sunny and warm day in northern Spain. Now they're headed towards a summit finish that's being used for the 3rd time ever at the Vuelta a Espana. First time was back in 1979, and as we've noted, the most recent time was last year when Rodriguez won and Igor Anton crashed on the road leading to the final summit finish, wearing the red jersey of overall leader. So our two riders here about to be picked up by the field.
And remember today, 131 miles, the total distance. It's a very long day. And so that adds up this many days into the race. 17th day of racing for these guys. Geox really drilling it on the front right now, surprisingly so for me to see them going this hard with no danger men up the road.
Without any danger riders, you can let a break go away, take the time bonuses. That's fine for Geox. They don't have to worry about stage victories or finishing in the time bonuses unless there's GC threats.
Machín Fernandez, the director of Geox. I talked with him yesterday, and he said that he would be happy to have a break right away and get to the climb in front of these guys and take up the time bonuses at the finish. And yet it does not look like that's the way they're riding it right now. They are flat out flying.
This is the front of the race. That 8-man breakaway on the descent was swallowed up. This is the back end of the field, but the front end being led by Geox, the team of overall race leader J.J. Cobo, with 2 climbs down and 1 to go.
Carlos Sastre, just before the stage started today, talked about the simple fact that he had no personal ambitions in today's race. It was only to work for Cobo today. When you've got a Tour de France champion as one of your domestiques, as well as Denis Menchov, who's also won a few Grand Tours in his day, that speaks volumes for this team.
No other team has as many Grand Tour winners on the roster at the Vuelta as Geox, with Menchov's 2 Vueltas and Sastre's 1 Tour de France title. So Cobo has the right teammates to help shepherd him in the red jersey and help him hang on to it the rest of the way in these final 5 days. There's a few Garmin-Cervelo riders at the back of that group. Dan Martin says he's really targeting today's summit finish to try and win his 2nd stage at this year's Vuelta, after also winning on La Cobetia at the end of stage 9.
Martin has certainly had a pretty awesome few weeks of racing in Spain, and he hasn't always got the result he's wanted, but the stage win and being on the podium on another stage and being a contender multiple times, he was one of the guys that really lamented his gear selection on the Angleroo a couple of days back, and he said that he was overgeared and it made it hard for him to stay up with Cobo. I think everybody made that same mistake except for Cobo.
And he couldn't allow the legs to spin like some of those other guys.
Yeah, Juan Jose Cobo was the guy who used the smallest gears. He ran a 34 front and a 32 in the back. That's a 28.3 gear-inch gear. And that's about 3 inches smaller than Nibali, and then other guys were just slightly bigger. Froome and Wiggins, slightly bigger than that. So every revolution of his pedals, he would go a little bit shorter distance, which means it's easier to turn the cranks over.
Coursing through the trees on this narrow alleyway as the field being led by Geox. This is the very front of the race now with just over 25K left. Greg Van Avermaet, the Belgian for BMC, has gone on the attack from the field with 16 kilometers left to go on stage 17.
He was part of that earlier 8-rider group, which has been swept up, and he's since gone on the attack one more time.
Not easy to attack from that group because they were just flying along. First led by Geox, then Katusha. Hard for anybody to try and attack. Greg Van Avermaet got a couple of seconds, but it looks like he's about to be swept up.
He started the day well over 2 minutes down, or 2 hours down in the general classification. Katusha still driving the front, and Avermaet really not getting any real daylight there.
And the red jersey, along with a couple of Geox teammates, sitting right behind 4 riders for Katusha at the front as they now pick up Greg Van Avermaet of BMC. Now for J.J. Cobo, he will no doubt have his spirits lifted by the fact that they are riding into his home region of Spain today, Cantabria. And they're saying that fans are going to come out on that final climb in support of the Spaniard's attempt to win his home Grand Tour.
Certainly having fan support is really important in a sport such as bike racing, when you're out there for so many hours on these roads and you get onto the final climbs and people are yelling your name and the energy is just electric.
And if you think about the realistic chances, as Igor Anton is now sitting at the back of the group, Anton says that he's hoping for good legs on today's stage because, as we noted earlier, this was the stage where he crashed out of the red jersey and out of the race last year. It was on these roads leading to that final climb of Peña Cabarga where, on a seemingly innocuous part of the road, he went down in the middle of the peloton, hurt his arm, crashed out of the race while he was leading, and he had a healthy lead at that point too.
He did. He had about a 45-second advantage, and everybody was wondering just how long he would keep that jersey and if he could hold it all the way through to the final day of the race. One crash changed all of his destiny there.
He had a short attack at the base of the Angleroo the other day on stage 15, and he says that he feels that he's now coming around. That's given him some confidence, so he's going to hope to give it a go here on the final summit finish today, as the front of the race now hits the 15K to go banner. As I was about to... The red jersey, the overall race lead, has not changed hands on the final summit finish in over a decade at the Vuelta a Espana. So it just goes to underscore how difficult it is going into the final summit day to wrestle that lead away. Now, it's changed hands late in the race, but that's usually because of a time trial. And we don't have a late individual time trial this year. It came back on stage 10.
Well, typically, guys who are leading the general classification in the final week are some of the best climbers in the race, and so it just goes to, makes sense, stands to reason that they're going to be able to defend on the summit finishes. However, those guys are often not very good in the time trial, and that's where they're very vulnerable.
That's one of the things that Vuelta wanted to do this year, give the climbers more of a chance to recover lost time from the TT. That's why they put it in the middle and put several summit finishes late in the third week. Some separation here from one rider at the front of the field as they go inside a 14K left. Looking like a Garmin Cervelo man to me.
We're going to call you Eagle Eye Schlanger from now on.
Now remember, Dan Martin is their main man for a finish like this, and he says he is targeting the summit finish to Peña Cabarga today. Matter of fact, last year it was this very same stage 17 that was an individual time trial, and it's where Vincenzo Nibali took the red jersey for good and held it for the final few days to win his first ever Grand Tour.
He put over 4 minutes into Joaquim Rodriguez, who had been in the red jersey as the overall leader. Over 4 minutes. It's a massive amount of time.
So they are still moving along here, headed towards that final climb, just over 6K away with an intermediate sprint in between here at the end of stage 17. Inside of 1K away from starting the climb. Starts at just over 6K from the finish. It'll average 9%. The max of 19% comes just about 100 meters from the summit and the finish of the stage. Most of the last kilometer, though, is well over 10%. There's a short downhill section at 2K to go from the line, and it also makes a sweeping left-hand turn inside the final kilometer. So those are some of the technical features to look out for on the climb that will begin shortly. Now Rabobank coming to the front, and they are trying to protect the podium aspirations of Bok Mollema, who right now sits in 4th and would like to move up into one of those 2 spots ahead of him, occupied by Chris Froome and Brad Wiggins, who are 2nd and 3rd. So here we go. This is the start of the Peña Cabarga climb.
Oh boy, strap on your seatbelts here. This is going to be a rough ride up this climb, and here we go.
There's Mollema in the white jersey near the front on the left-hand side. And the riders are ready. Guys coming to the front. Geox is also up there, riding for Kobo, trying to set a hard tempo to discourage the attacks behind. But Rabobank is there for Bok Mollema. Garmin Cervelo is there for Dan Martin.
It's really an ugly climb, up to 8, 9, 10% right in the first 500 meters. And then it almost just starts getting worse from there. There is a little bit of relief just past halfway up for 1 kilometer.
There's JJ Kobo just to the right of Joaquim Rodriguez, who's in the green jersey. They're near the bottom of the screen. Rabobank man riding up a little ways ahead of his teammate Bok Mollema. Climb gets harder as it goes, steepest near the top.
One of the problems with going early, as we're seeing here, is that typically when you make a really hard effort early on a climb to establish a break, a gap from the group, you end up blowing up. You can't recover from that effort. You have to ride into it and then use what you have left at the finish.
All right, so the Rabobank rider followed by an Euskaltel rider. And this is back to Carlos Sastre of Geox.
As Carlos not good at really explosive climbs these days. I do think that he will start to ride back up to the group, but will he make it back up there to help Kobo? That's doubtful at this point.
Yeah, he attacked on the Angleroo the other day. And there's the race leader, J.J. Kobo, sitting right behind Amits Charuka of Euskaltel.
Well, Antone obviously showing that he has ambitions as he's put Charuka on the front. Kobo sliding to the right, Mollema sliding to the left in the white jersey. And it looks like Kobo is happy to let Charuka ride away.
No, he's not a danger to him. Dan Martin.
It is Dan Martin.
Dan Martin going to go right by Charuka.
Oh, Martin going early again. He went early on the Angleroo on stage number 15. He eventually kind of came unraveled a little bit, but he said that his gear was too hard. Let's see how he makes it up this one.
We noted earlier that he was targeting the stage to get his second summit finish victory of this year's Vuelta a Espana.
Martin picked up the win on stage 9 to the Covatia summit, besting Bok Mollema and Juan Jose Kobo on that day.
Joaquim Rodriguez in the green jersey just ahead of the leader, J.J. Kobo, as another rider goes up the right-hand side. Dan Martin still leading Amits Charuka here. This is the front of the stage. Martin finally developing the mental confidence to ride this deep into a Grand Tour and ride this well. He says in the past his body and his mind have just not been in the proper place to ride this aggressively in the final week of a Grand Tour. It's now finally all coming together for the Irishman, and he's making a very aggressive move on the lower slopes of the final climb.
Martin coming off of a second overall plus a stage win at the Tour of Poland. The rider that was attacking was, yeah, it is Chris Anker Sorensen. It will look like a Saxo Bank Sungard rider. Indeed, he's another guy who's really targeted today.
Team that won yesterday's stage. J.J. Hayedo becoming the first Argentine to ever win a Grand Tour stage. And Saxo Bank picking up their first Vuelta stage win this year. Now Chris Anker Sorensen trying to bridge up to the leader, Dan Martin. And these are the other GC riders behind them.
Dan Martin here. He's got an interesting style. He has a lot of motion in his upper body. He kind of pops the shoulders up and down, but he does have the good leg speed right now. See if he can keep that a little bit better than he did on the Angleroo. After the Angleroo, he said the climb was stupid. He was really frustrated.
Giox at the front. Joaquim Rodriguez sitting second wheel in the green jersey. Jurgen Vandenbroek is up there for Omega Farmalato, the red jersey. Behind Vandenbroek, J.J. Kobo. Chris Froome is right behind Kobo. On the right-hand side of this group, in a white jersey, is Brad Wiggins. There he is. You can see him over the right shoulder of the Giox rider.
The Giox rider being Denis Menchov, one of the greatest riders that we've had in the last 10 years, with 3 Grand Tour victories to his resume.
This is back to the front. Dan Martin. 10 seconds. Back to that group. Now Bok Mollema on that stage 9 Covatia summit finish that Dan Martin won. Said that he made a mistake. He felt he could have out-sprinted Dan Martin for the victory, but looked the wrong way. Mollema so far sitting back, not trying to go up to Dan Martin. Chris Anker Sorensen did. He's getting passed by a Movistar rider now with 4K to go.
Once again, it looks like Brusayan on the move. Let's see if Sorensen can stick on the wheel there. And he cannot.
Brusayan has been in.
Look at the difference in their leg speed when we see these two guys together. Martin staying on top of that gear a little bit more. Wow.
Remarkable. So, we'll do the math, and we'll bring you back with the post-race report presented by SRAM right after this on Universal Sports. The question for Chris Froome before the stage. Do you go for the win and risk losing a podium? Well, the answer was more than definitive. In the final kilometer to the Peña Cabarga summit finish, he went for it all.
I have not seen a final kilometer of a bike race like that I can remember in my lifetime, Steve. Absolutely.
Up The new general classification after the mano-a-mano battle between Chris Froome and J.J. Cobo at the end of stage 17. Cobo holds on to the lead, but Froome cuts his deficit from 22 to 13 seconds. Brad Wiggins slips all the way back to 141 back. So it is right now a two-man race for the red jersey. So Cobo holds on to the overall lead, but Chris Froome gets the stage win, his first ever at a Grand Tour, in thrilling fashion.
First of all, congratulations. What an awesome victory. What are you feeling now?
That was undescribable. That was, I think, one of the hardest days on the bicycle of my life.
Maybe today was one of the last opportunities to take time to the leader.
Yeah, exactly. For that, I mean, it's the last mountaintop finish, so both myself and Bradley from Team Sky, we came in here trying to do as much as we could today. But yeah, as you can see, Cobo was extremely strong today, and he's still holding the red jersey, I think, by 2 seconds.
No, it's a pity, but your teammate Bradley Wiggins has the same lucky as you today, and you have to lead in the Sky now, isn't it?
Some days he's stronger than me, some days I'm stronger. Yeah, it's about a team effort. The team have been fantastic the last 2.5 weeks. The team have held us up every day, so we're just doing the most we can.
There's no doubt about that. You've been working so hard to be here on this position. What do you expect from now to the end of the Vuelta?
Well, like you said, the worst is now over. So I think we're still going to have to go out there every day and look to make the most of it. But yeah, I fear the hardest is over now.
So Chris, congratulations again. Thank you from all the Spanish people for this show.
Thank you. I also want to thank the Spanish people. They've been fantastic in supporting us. Keep it up.
A stirring, impassioned defense of the red jersey by J.J. Cobo. And the fans have turned out to support him on the day after one of the most memorable rides of his career, and he said that he thought all was lost on the summit finish going up to Peña Cabarga, but it was because of those fans cheering him on in his home region of Cantabria that he found the motivation needed to battle back. But he also realizes the Vuelta is far from over with still 4 days left to go. Today for stage 18, it's 174 kilometers. The riders will start out going southwest and do a counterclockwise loop of just over 100 kilometers back to the start town of today's stage, Solaris, and then eventually will make their way northeast to the northernmost point of this year's race and the finishing town of Nohant today. And it's only the second day of this year's race where we have as many as 5 climbs on the profile.
A lot of climbs today, but not super big climbs. Definitely has looked like a day for the breakaways, and all the riders knowing that these next few days all play into the hands of the breakaways.
And it's another sunny day with the temperature around 80 degrees in northern Spain as we take you to the top 5 on the general classification with 4 days left to go. Really a two-man race now between J.J. Cobo and Chris Froome, who has trimmed his deficit to 13 seconds with these 4 days of racing left to go. And now we pick up the action live. There is a 17-man breakaway that has a pretty healthy lead on the main field of over 9 minutes. Had over 10 at one point and still holding on to a large chunk of their lead. As you might suspect, no big GC threats in the breakaway, with Geox back at the front of the field controlling the tempo. But in the break today, we do have Joaquim Rodriguez, we do have Luis Leon Sanchez, and we do have also Matteo Monagudi, the Italian for Omega Pharma Lotto, who's trying to make a run at the King of the Mountains classification. So some guys with different agendas in the break today. But for Geox, their primary agenda is to just ride tempo at the front of the field and really let that break get as much time as they want for the most part, as long as it's within reason, because if they eat up the bonus time, that's fine for them.
The highest man on GC in that massive group is Robert Kieserlowski, and he is 17 minutes down in the general classification.
Road ID stage profile. 2 climbs down, 3 to go, as they are just about to start the Category 1 climb, toughest of the day. And J.J. Cobo riding through his home region of Cantabria yesterday and today. And that played a huge role, as he admitted afterwards, in helping him keep that red jersey yesterday when it looked like all was lost. Looked like he was getting dropped. And that with the time bonuses, that Chris Froome, who you see in the white jersey of the combined classification here, looked like Froome was going to ride into red. And while Cobo leads the combined classification, Froome is second. Obviously, Cobo's wearing the red jersey of overall leader. Froome wearing white today, sitting second in that category. And in the green jersey, our new points leader, Bok Mollema of Rabobank. He took the points lead over from Joaquim Rodriguez at the end of yesterday's stage. And Mollema sitting just off the podium right now in 4th position. So right now he's given a go at the points competition as well as the podium in Madrid on Sunday. But J.J. Cobo, the man of the moment yesterday, a guy who said that it's always been his nerves, his anxiety, his lack of meeting the moment, rising up to the occasion when necessary, crumbling under the pressure. That's been his big problem in the past. And, well, he's never faced as much pressure as he did yesterday in that final kilometer, and he more than answered the call.
He really did it. In fact, every interview that he gave in the last couple of days, every time I've seen him on the podium, he looks very happy, very calm, very collected. He looks like the guy who could be the superstar of the sport if he weren't 30 years of age. He's a little late to be taking over the sport as the new superstar, but he just looks so comfortable in the position as the leader right now.
And from the back of the group, we're down to 168 riders left in the race. And El Madrazo of the Movistar team, the most recent to pull out. A bout of sickness has been going through that team. They had 3 pull out during yesterday's stage 17. Madrazo abandons today, so Movistar really having a bad run of luck.
In addition, his teammate Erviti also sick last night, but still in the race. Zog also out of the race, so sickness really hitting the peloton right now.
So the 17-man breakaway with a large lead on the field on the road to Noja today in northern Spain. 174 kilometers on the books. We come back to the front of the field, led by Geox with the red jersey in tow. Very interesting when you think about the teams with the top 2 riders in the general classification, Geox and Sky, because they both came to this Vuelta with different GC leaders. Geox had Dennis Menchov and Carlos Sastre. Sky had Brad Wiggins. But here we are 4 days from the finish, and it's 2 other guys who are at the top of the GC standings with J.J. Cobo and Chris Froome.
Sometimes you can't predict how it's all going to play out. Even further interesting is the fact that Geox's Dennis Menchov and Carlos Sastre actually were 1st and 2nd in the race overall back in 2005. 18 seconds separated them at the finish line.
Yeah, if this margin holds all the way to the finish, it would be the 3rd closest Vuelta ever, and the closest since 1956 at 13 seconds between 1st and 2nd place. And this is back up to our 17-man breakaway. 2 Astana riders in the group. Sergio Palino is the rider for Radio Shack there near the front, and Palino also won a stage of the Vuelta back in 2006 in the same
going
region.
On the attack.
As Heinrich Hausler makes a move here. So this is on the Cat 1 climb, the Alisas.
Pretty funny to see Hausler not only in this move, but going on the attack, because at the start line, he was complaining about how ridiculously fast and hard it was, and he said it was good for his preparation for the Worlds, but impossible for him to win a stage this year.
Yeah, I don't know about this move. The little acceleration here on the Cat 1, everybody pretty much responds to it. And the Astana rider here going up the left-hand side of the road.
It's very possible that Hausler's feeling that he's going to get dropped on this climb, and he was hoping they would let him ride away early on and get a little bit of a buffer.
Robert Kieserlowski and Josef Youthfrey are the 2 Astana riders in the move.
That's Kieserlowski there. So that's the highest man in the breakaway. 17 minutes, 16 seconds down. That's a long way, but he's obviously going for a stage win here today, maybe trying to draw out a few other guys from this group of breakaway riders.
He's typically an aggressive rider. Still a long way to go. They're on the Cat 1 now. They have a couple of Cat 3s remaining. Intermediate sprint. And still over 50 kilometers of racing here on stage 18.
Long way to go, but Kieselowski, as you said, does like to animate. He's an attacking type of rider. Down a little bit in the general classification at 17 minutes. That gives him some freedom to go up the road. And he has to be responded to by Monteguti there, number 18 for AG2R, because Monteguti is chasing those KOM points.
Over the first climb, he got maximum points. He got the second most points available on the second climb. David Monteguti, who's leading the King of the Mountains, is not in the move today, so Monteguti trying to slice into his deficit.
Well, and interestingly enough, the third man in this group is the teammate of David Monteguti, and that right there is Nico Seymans. So Seymans is the guy who is going to try and take points away from Monteguti and help preserve the lead of his teammate in that King of the Mountains classification.
For AG2R, chasing the King of the Mountains. They've also been chasing stage wins as Kieselowski goes again up the left-hand side of the road.
Monteguti did get the maximum points on the Category 3, but at the Category 2, Seymans out-sprinted him and took a couple of points away from him.
This is back to Geox leading the field. Geox also leading the team competition. But their primary goal right now is JJ Koba and his well-being over the 13 climbs that will be included in these next 3 days of racing. And now back to the live action on stage 18. Francis de Grief of Omega Pharma Lotto has joined our three riders out front with just over 55 kilometers left to go. So it's Kieselowski, also Monteguti. And now another move from the Astana rider coming out the front. I should say Lampre. That is Gavazzi.
Gavazzi's a man with a good sprint out of this big group, and he actually climbs fairly well also. He likely will be the guy with the best kick at the end if he can keep himself in contention with this group.
They're strung out at about half a minute behind. Now our 4 leaders at the front of the race as they go up this Cat 1 climb known as the Alixas, and this is actually the other side of the climb they did yesterday just prior to the Peña Cabarga final climb of the day. As Cat 1, 9.5 kilometers, averaging just over 6%. The maximum of 11% comes right near the top, so still on their way towards that. It's about 2K away now. And the gap still holding steady at over 9 minutes with Geox at the front of this field.
Geox really not put under any pressure at all today, even though that is a large group. No danger men. They can let them ride many minutes away, and at 9.5 minutes, 10 minutes, doesn't make any difference in the general classification battle.
Well, Movistar doesn't have many guys left. Emmanuel Urviti is number 111, and Beñat Inchosti, the Spaniard, is number 113, but they had 3 guys pull out yesterday. Another rider, Madrazo, pull out during the stage today.
Madrazo up most of the night with the stomach problems. Urviti also in big trouble, but still in the bike race. The team has really been depleted from illness, and yet they've still ridden so well in the general classification battle for team. They came into the day in 4th place, not having many guys left in the race.
Well, they got some good news. Looking ahead to next year's edition of the Vuelta, as it was announced that next year's race will start in the Navarra region of northern Spain, and that's where Movistar is based. The race will actually start in the city of Pamplona with a time trial, August 18th, 2012. So mark your calendars.
That's looking like Joaquim Rodriguez there leading the chase up the climb. Gavazzi, the Lampre rider, dropped off the back of that group of about 5. And Rodriguez, we're not used to seeing him in his Team Katusha jersey. He's been in the combination jersey, the sprinter's jersey, all kinds of jerseys in this race so far.
Also not used to seeing him in the breakaway, but he's lost so much time on the GC that they're giving him some leash to go up the road. So de Grief now at the front of this group. Kieselowski second for Astana, then Monteguti for AG2R. And then it's Nico Seymans, the Belgian from Cofidis, riding at the back. But it's starting to split up even more as they go up the climb. This will summit with 53.2 kilometers left to go in the stage. And coming up towards the maximum slope of 11%. 17-man breakaway, but splintering on the only Cat 1 climb of the day and the third of the 5 categorized climbs on the profile for stage number 18. Here's Sergio Palino of Radio Shack now moving to the front of this group. I mentioned before, Palino, winner of a Vuelta stage 5 years ago in this region of Cantabria.
One of a handful of Portuguese riders ever to win a stage of the Vuelta. And you can see now just how much damage is being done to this what was a 17-rider group. That's the reason why Heinrich Hausler was going on the attack at the bottom of the climb. He was hoping they'd let him get that gap and that he would be able to crest the top, still in contention. The way it is now, he may not be able to contest the finish of this race with the leaders.
We have 6 guys here now at the front. Kieselowski leading the way, Monteguti second. Seamans third for Cofidis, then Palino of Radio Shack, De Grief of Omega, and there goes Sergio Palino towards the top. Monteguti, though, is on his wheel, and then Nico Seamans is behind him.
Well, the real battle there is all about Monteguti. He's the guy trying to get those KOM points and get the jersey off the back of Moncoutier.
And Seamans for Cofidis trying to protect his teammate Moncoutier in that lead in the King of the Mountains classification. So he's going to try and battle with Monteguti to steal the points away at the top of the climb.
Yeah, Monteguti on the front right now, looking over at Seamans. There's Kieselowski as well in the blue of Astana. Monteguti has picked up 6 points already today. He's closed his deficit to Moncoutier to 16 points in the King of the Mountains competition.
500 meters from the summit of the climb. Only Cat 1 on the profile today. And more riders regaining contact here at the back of the group.
That's Gavazzi coming across in the Lampre colors, third from the back. Rodriguez on the front.
So it's Joaquim Rodriguez leading the way, Monteguti second, Seamans third, Palino fourth, and Kieselowski fifth. Now Robert Kieselowski for Astana moving up the right-hand side near the guardrail.
Oroz has made it as well in the orange of Euskaltel.
Kieselowski swings to the inside, takes the lead, but Monteguti comes back to the front.
Volodymyr Gustov, the Ukrainian for Saxo Bank on the left side of your screen at the back. That's the entire group that's left at the front.
Summit in the distance. Rodriguez has slipped all the way to the back. Now Palino at the front for Radio Shack. Kieselowski on his wheel, then Monteguti third.
Seamans just marking every pedal stroke of Monteguti as he tries to get those maximum points away.
There goes Seamans. Nico Seamans launches the move. Now Monteguti comes over on his right-hand side. So it's a battle between Monteguti and Seamans for the maximum points at the top of the climb.
And there are a lot of points on a Category 1. 15 points for first place. If Monteguti gets this, he pulls within 1 in the King of the Mountains classification.
Nico Seamans.
Maybe too early. Too early for Seamans. He's going to falter.
Monteguti on his right.
He's got it. Seamans holds on.
He may have gone early, but he had just enough left at the finish to get the maximum points and protect his teammate David Moncoutier's lead in the King of the Mountains competition.
Well, that's a big deal. That means that now Monteguti gets 10 points instead of 15. So there's still a 6-point difference for the King of the Mountains classification for the overall lead.
Well, it's a team sport in so many ways. Not just riding for the general classification the way Geox has been the last few days, but protecting other competitions that are going on within the race, as we see with Cofidis, a perfect example here for the King of the Mountains. So they've crested the summit of the Cat 1. Now a pair of Cat 3s left to go in the final 50 kilometers of stage 18 in northern Spain at the Vuelta. Leaders on the descent of the Category 1 climb. As we're just inside of 50 kilometers left to go on stage 18. And Francesco Gavazzi of Lampre has come to the front. Things really started to come apart for the 17-man group out front on the slopes of the climb. with a Category 1. It's steeper than the other ones they've done so far today, so small groups were forming, but now others starting to catch back on with a high-speed descent.
Gavazzi doesn't want to see Hausler get back on because Hausler is realistically the only man in a straight-up sprint that has the speed of Gavazzi in this breakaway group. So it actually behooves him to keep guys motivated right now and keep Hausler off the back.
And what a lot of these guys in the breakaway today were thinking as we look at Nicolas Roche, who is attacked from the front end of the field, number 11 for AG2R. A lot of the breakaway riders today thinking that Geox was going to let a group go up the road and not really challenge them, because with the time bonuses at the intermediate sprints and at the finish line, Geox is content to let non-threatening riders battle for those and the stage win. So it's certainly a stage win opportunity for guys in the break today as Emmanuel Urviti continues to struggle for Movistar out the back of the peloton. So a lot of guys just essentially thinking that it's a good opportunity to win a stage because Geox would really not be pulling hard behind.
Great opportunity to win a stage. Urviti here, one of only 4 guys left on the team that started with 9, like every other team in the race. They've been just decimated by illness. And Chosti been at the back of the field, and they still have Rusagin as well as Pablo Lastras. And those are the only 4 left in the race for that squad.
This is back to the front of the field, and again, it's just Geox riding a steady tempo. And look at this. The lead has gone out to almost 11 minutes now for the 17 riders up the road. As it looks like Vacan Soleil as a rider who may be trying to attack. Wouter Poels is their top rider on GC, even though he slipped out of the top 10 yesterday. And that is indeed Poels. So Poels maybe trying to move back up into the top 10.
Well,
He's
Roche
currently sitting 11th.
Yeah, Roche actually, who just went up the road, comes into the day in 17th. So there's a good man that he could ride with. 2 strong riders, down a little bit in the classification.
So Wouter Poels at 5:43 back on the GC, sitting just 10 seconds out of 10th place. And it's a big deal to finish in the top 10 at a Grand Tour, so it may not seem like a lot, but to get that next spot, to get inside the top 10, that does mean something for a guy like Wout Poels here.
Sure, he's 23 years old. He's really calling this his first Grand Tour, even though it's his second, because he started the Tour de France, was sick, and dropped out very early, right around the end of the first week. He regrouped, he got his training back online after he got healthy, and he's really been one of the animators of this bike race. Several top 10 finishes, even on the podium on some stages.
He's a good climber. He's got a couple of top 5s on some of the steeper summit finishes here at the race, showing the ability to be strong on the summits of some of the tougher climbs, and now attacking from the field. And again, remember, the field still going up the Category 1 climb because they're so far back. They are still going up, while that big break up the road now with 11 minutes is on the descent of the Cat 1.
That break.
Poels coming up to the back of Nicolas Roche here. These two just off the front of the field right now, but still going uphill towards the summit of the Cat 1. At the front of the race, which we saw just a moment ago, they have 10 riders together. So they've lost 7 along the way who are still on the descent, trying to get back on. They came off the back before they went over the summit of this climb a short while ago. So we still have the 17 riders up the road in front of these two, and then behind Poels and Roche, we have the field led by Geox.
I actually spoke with Art Beards of Vacan Soleil yesterday after the stage just to kind of figure out what was going on with Poels. He said he just had a little bit of a bad day, but he was still going to be looking for opportunities. And remember, Poels has had second in stage 5 to Valdepeñas de Jaén and to Rodriguez there, and he also got second on the Angler route to Cobo. So this is a guy who definitely is really in the hunt for a stage win. The problem now is he's 11 minutes behind that group up the road.
Nicolas Roche just in front of him here for AG2R. Attacked a couple of different times back in the first half of the race. Never really got any substantial rope to work with. Right now with Poels here just in front of the field, but 11 minutes behind the leaders. Really tough for these guys to do much. Poles, again, just trying to move up in the GC to perhaps get inside the top 10, a place he's been most of the race so far. They come up to the summit of the climb. Now 10:39 back of that front group.
Yeah, it's pretty much no man's land. At least there are two of them to work together. But still, to even catch that front group is pretty much going to be impossible for two riders.
And with Poles, it's really about getting in front of Mikel Nieve, who sits just one spot ahead of him on the GC. Also Daniel Moreno, who's 2 spots up. Guys he is chasing to get inside the top 10 on the general classification, and they are both back with the field here. Still climbing, and the clock still counting to the top of the Alisas climb. Lee Howard, the HTC High Road rider who missed out in the sprint a few days ago when guys went the wrong way in a roundabout. He was well positioned for HTC High Road to try and challenge for the win, and now sitting at the back of the field as they crest the summit of the Cat 1. So a front group of 10, 38 kilometers left to go on the stage.
Kohler out of the original break, the BMC man in the middle. That is Ufre, the Spanish rider for Astana, on the back.
And Davide Malacarne of Quickstep looks to be the other rider. So part of the original 17-man breakaway. They were dropped, so kind of caught out there back of the front of the race and still ahead of Poles and Roche, who have gone on the attack from the field.
They were dropped on the Puerta de Alisas Category 1, the biggest climb of the day. There's still a couple of Cat 3s left to come in the stage.
This is back to the front of the race. Sergio Palino of Radio Shack sitting at the back of the group now. And the Road ID stage profile with the riders going to the Cat 3 climb that precedes another Cat 3. Last 2 climbs of the day after a 3, 2, and 1 already. They're on stage 18.
So those 3 guys we were just looking at, just about a minute behind. Not giving up the fight yet. And Monteguti here thinking about King of the Mountains glory.
Well, he has those 2 Cat 3s coming up, but not as many points available for a Cat 3 as what he would have gotten on that last Cat 1 for going across first.
Unfortunately, he missed out on there. He's only 6 points down in the classification. These next 2 Cat 3s are worth 3 points each to win. If he wins them both, he'll be in a tie with Moncoutier.
Rodriguez talking to other riders at the front there. Perito, a little chatty Cathy today.
Well, Perito, you know, maybe he sees this as an opportunity to get back into that points jersey that he so much wants. He wants to win something in this race besides stages.
Now, Euskaltel has a rider at the front of the field now as they are on the descent of the Cat 1. 11.5 minutes back. Gioc still with the most riders at the front of this group. One of the interesting dynamics now of this race for the top of the general classification between J.J. Cobo and Chris Froome. The big problem for Team Sky is they're not just battling Giocs, they're battling all of these other teams that are riding for different things, for the King of the Mountains, for intermediate sprints, for stage wins, for other classifications. So they have guys from various teams going up the road, hindering their chances of pulling back time on the general classification. So while they're not necessarily battling them for the GC, those other ambitions for these other teams really compromise the chances for Sky in their specific battle with Giocs for the top of the general classification.
Absolutely. It is a very complex equation out there on the road. And guys really want the Mountains jersey, and they really want the points jersey, and they want to win stages. So those are things are all going to get in the way of a guy like Chris Froome picking up intermediate time bonus sprint and getting a 6-second bonus.
And it's so easy to frame it as a battle between Sky and Giocs, but it's so much more complicated than that.
And that's why Froome and his entire team put everything into yesterday, because they knew that was a day where those other guys weren't going to play a factor. If you had good legs, you could make up time. And so they threw everything at it. They got back 9 seconds, but they still need 13 more. And Cobo and Giocs look really good.
Swinging back to the front group on the road. 36.5K left. And Juan Oroz, the Euskaltel rider in the orange. And Euskaltel now with a couple of riders at the front of the field, just in front of Geox. And again, there goes Seamans and Monteguti towards the top of the Cat 3.
Seamans really going early this time. Man, this guy is doing the big work for his team leader, Monteguti, and he's picking up maximum points once again, so he's going to get 3. And that means it only leaves 2 points for Monteguti.
That's what you call sacrificing for your teammate.
Maybe Rodriguez was hassling Monteguti, saying, I can't believe you let a Belgian beat you on the King of the Mountains. Being that Belgians are from the flatlands and not typically known for their climbing.
That's when he could have fired back about the TT skills of Perito. So some low blows being exchanged. So Seamans, for the second climb in a row here on stage 18, gets the maximum points to protect the King of the Mountains lead of his teammate, David Monteguti, with now 36 kilometers left to go, and still one more climb, a Cat 3 coming up that will summit with 26.7K remaining in the stage.
So now at this point, mathematically impossible for the King of the Mountains jersey to change hands today.
But still some climbs coming up each of the next 2 days at the Vuelta, so still some opportunities for Monteguti to pull back time on the polka dot jersey. As Monteguti moves in front of Seamans here. These the first 2 on the road at the moment. This is the front of the race with 33K left to go. Final climb of 5 on the day. Summiting with just over 26 kilometers left to a brand new finish town today, Noja. The northernmost point of the race this year in Spain, beach town. But a cloudy day out here on the road, even though earlier there was some sunshine at the beach. So we'll see if in fact it clears up in the next 33 kilometers as this group is hanging on to a lead of over 11.5 minutes. Well, just a moment ago on the descent of the Category 3 climb, it was Nico Seamans, the Cofidis rider, who got the maximum points over the top of the climb, but on the descent, chasing Matteo Monteguti, he locked him up.
Big time. Monteguti actually attacked him over the top, figuring if I can't outride him on the climb, I'll just try and outride him on the descent and get the next King of the Mountain. And right as Seamans closed the gap, he almost went off the road.
Now back at the front of the peloton, Euskaltel has seemingly brought everybody to the front. Their highest placed rider is Mikel Nieve in the GC. He is sitting in 10th position, so trying to preserve his top 10. They've yet to win a stage, and they're also looking ahead to tomorrow when the Vuelta goes into the Basque Country for the first time in over 3 decades. So maybe a little excited about going into their home region. This orange and black Euskaltel team that's had so many disappointments so far at the Tour of Spain this year.
Thomas Chiruca, one of the riders, talking about how great the crowd was yesterday at the Peña Cabarga. And it really he said it motivates them so much for the Basque region. And in that breakaway group, there are 2 guys that are really threatening their top 10 for the general classification. Both Kiewirlowski and Rodriguez could vault up ahead of Nieve today.
And Wouter Poels attacking a short while ago, sitting in 11th position, just 10 seconds behind Nieve. So certainly a top 10 going on between Poels, Nieve, and a few others. And while Euskaltel came into this race as maybe the top team in terms of depth and their ability to ride for the general classification, Igor Anton, after crashing out with the race lead a year ago, was touted as the big favorite, but he's been out of the picture since almost the opening day. And he's struggled on almost every mountain. They haven't gotten a stage win. They've just struggled in so many ways. So it's been a lot of disappointment for the Basque-based team, and now trying to recover before they go into their home region tomorrow.
And under the impetus of the Euskaltel squad, they did pull back Poels and Nicolas Roche, who had gone off the front of the field on the Category 1 climb. So those guys at least are not up the road anymore, but still a bunch of men off the front. That 17-rider group that got away very early is still up the road, splintered up a little bit.
And our front group now starting the final climb, the Cat 3, Las Varas. It'll summit with 26.7 kilometers left to go. So not a long climb as they approach the final 30K now of today's stage.
Well, he's certainly shown that he's been exceptionally strong. I don't know if he's been stronger than Kobo or not, but I definitely think he has looked stronger than Wiggins over the course of this race.
One of the big differences between Kobo and Froome has been time bonuses. J.J. Kobo has 52 seconds of bonus time throughout the course of this race to just 20 seconds for Froome. So that's over a half minute of time bonuses right there, and that's really the big difference in why Kobo has the red jersey and Froome doesn't.
Yeah, when you're looking at a 13-second time differential on the general classification, that's massive. Froome also this year went to a smaller road bike. He was on a 58, but now he's on a 56. He's more comfortable. And actually, as recently as the Tour of Poland, not long before the start of this race, he changed his Pro logo saddle to a different saddle. And Bobby said immediately he felt much better on the bike. So, you know, talking with Bobby Julich, he said he felt like a proud father, like that his athlete that he's been coaching has just blossomed over these couple of weeks.
On this front group, inside of 30 kilometers now left to go to the finish of stage 18, and just about 3K away from the summit of this climb, and Sergio Palino launching the attack. This is the final summit of the day, and Palino now getting a good gap.
Nice early move by him. Gavazzi on the front, Rodriguez right behind. Gavazzi on the front of the field looking back saying, I'm not going to bring him back. Who wants a piece of Palino? You better start riding.
Well, with this being the final summit of the day, and then it being either downhill or flat the rest of the way to the finish, and inside of 30K left to go, these guys have to start thinking now about the dynamics of how to get that stage win, who you want to drop before you get to the line, because you don't want to drag a good sprinter to the line. You want to make sure that it's as small a group as possible and other riders you can beat out if it comes to a sprint. So that has to be going through the minds of these riders at the front of the race right now. When to attack, when to make the move, because winning the stage is really in the forefront of their mind at this point, with the climbing just about in the rearview mirror for the day.
Very smart move, really. I mean, honestly, Palino is not going to be able to beat Gavazzi in a straight-up sprint. He's got a decent kick. He's definitely good at sniffing them out. He won stage 10 of the Tour de France last year. That made him the 4th rider from Portugal to win a stage of the Tour.
Now let's point out the distinction. This is the field going over the climb before the one that the leaders are on. They're so close together that you basically go down and straight back up. This is now the 4th group on the road. It's the main field of all the GC riders. So they're going over the penultimate climb here. They're now on the descent. The leaders at the front of the race are towards the summit of the final climb. Both of them Cat 3s.
Let's just put it this way, though. They're almost, Palino is almost 9 miles ahead of them on the road. There's 10 miles between those two summits of those two climbs. And Palino, maybe he's 8 miles in front of that peloton. That's a big gap.
A little over a kilometer away from the summit now for Palino, who is attacked from the front group. Just about 10K from one summit to the next, from the one the field just went over to the one that Palino is about to go up. Relatively speaking, 2 peaks pretty close to one another.
Palino has won stage of the Vuelta before, back in 2006. He's a couple of times Portuguese national TT champion. He called his stage 10 win of the Tour de France last year the biggest victory of his career.
And it has not been a great Vuelta a Espana for Radio Shack. They came in with leaders Yanni Brajkovic and Andreas Kloden. Kloden pulled out because he had not recovered from the back injury suffered at the Tour de France. Brajkovic was at the Tour, also suffered from a crash and was in the top 10 for a while here at the Vuelta before starting to fade. Same story for Jaime Zubeldia. He was up there right around the top 10. He started to lose time in the mountains of the second week. So it hasn't been a very bright Vuelta a Espana for this Radio Shack team, but they knew that the deck was stacked against them coming in with guys so banged up from the Tour. It was going to be a hard Vuelta, and it's proven to be just that. So the 10-man group will be the second over the summit, it looks like, with Sergio Palino just about to the top of the Cat 3. And he's extended his lead now to over 40 seconds. So just about double the time from the margin we saw a few moments ago.
Palino, a very good time trialist. This is a really good move for him because he's the type of guy who can throw it down from the top of this climb. Only 16.5 miles from the top to the finish.
Good crowd at the top, too. So Sergio Palino will be the first across the summit of the final of 5 climbs on the day on stage number 18. And now just about 26.5 kilometers, all downhill or flat, the rest of the way to the finish in Doha. Left to go on stage 18 for the leader, Radio Shack's Sergio Palino. But this was just a moment ago. Leader of the points competition in the green jersey, Buck Mollema of Rabobank. Mechanical issue, pulling over to the side of the road. Mollema just 24 seconds out of a podium place right now, sitting in 4th on the general classification.
Rabobank teammate waiting for him up the road, and this is Sergio Palino, the man off the front, 47 seconds now in front of the chase group.
So what do you think about Palino's chances at this point? Still a ways to go, but no more climbing.
I think they're very good. As soon as he got up over 30 seconds on the climb, I immediately thought the man has definitely a shot. He's got legs. I mean, he really forged his early part of his career as a time trial guy. He's medaled at the under-23 Worlds. He's been a multiple-time under-23 and elite champion in Portugal in the time trial. He's definitely a dangerous man for the win right now.
These other guys chasing. Started as a 17-man breakaway earlier today. Really started to come apart on the climb of the Cat 1 with just over 50 kilometers left to go, and it's never come back together. It was a 10-man group out front for a while, and Palino attacking and going over the summit of the final climb first. Now he's out front by himself with his lead hovering right around 45, 46 seconds, over 60K an hour on the downhill off the Cat 3.
Palino, a very competent descender. Don't expect this descent to give him any trouble whatsoever. He's attacking this road, using every inch of the asphalt, taking the corners wide, shooting through to the apex and back out wide on the exit.
31-year-old with his 6th different team in Radio Shack since turning pro back in 2003. 3 Grand Tour stage wins, 2 at the Tour, 1 at the Vuelta, just missing out on the Giro. And would like to bag his 2nd ever Vuelta stage win here today. And it would be in the same region where he first won back in 2006, Cantabria, the home region of our race leader, Jacenko of Geox.
Palino using the technique known as counter steering, coming into the corners where you actually just kind of push the inside part of your handlebar as you go into a corner. You push it away from you and it leans over the bike and you surf it on through. Weight the outside pedal.
Now the group chasing at about 46 seconds with 20K left to go for the leader, Sergio Palino. Back here, Euskaltel still leading the way for the peloton as they are trying to protect the top 10 of Mikel Nieve. Currently sits in 10th at 5:33 back of the red jersey. He's their highest placed man on the general classification. So wanted to make sure that nobody up the road got too much time, that Nieve would be bumped down outside the top 10. And so far, they've accomplished that goal. They have everything within check in terms of keeping Nieve where he is right now.
Yeah, real quick, rough math. They got to keep Kieserlowski within about 12 minutes. Kieserlowski's the danger man. Right now, they're a little over 11. That gap will probably come down toward the end. So no time for panic from Euskaltel whatsoever.
Now, not often do you see the top 2 guys on the GC battling it out that way, with the lead changing hands several times in the final kilometer, on the final summit finish, no less. Sometimes you see more defensive racing, and sometimes guys just don't have it in their legs to be able to fight at the end of a 3-week race like that. But all of the circumstances were right. They were both strong enough, and so we got one of those rare battles that was just so thrilling in so many ways.
Look at Kieserlowski there yelling at Monteguti on the back. Kieserlowski in the blue of Astana. Monteguti, the only guy of these 10 not rotating through, taking the wrath a little bit there of the Croatian.
Malacarne for quick step at the front, followed by Joaquim Rodriguez, number 81 for Katusha, second in the line. 18K to go for the leader, Sergio Palino. Five climbs down, and now flat or downhill the rest of the way. It's very much a downhill slope just before 1 kilometer from the finish today, and then it eases back to slightly downhill the rest of the way to the finish from about 900 meters to the end. We'll have a sweeping left-hand turn right at the red kite with 1 kilometer left to go, but it's about it in terms of what they face the rest of the way. So nothing terribly difficult and nothing to really launch a move in the final 18 kilometers of racing, as Polino's lead is now up to 50 seconds.
And Juan Jose Oroz, the Euskaltel rider in orange on the back, was also just hassling Monteguti, trying to really intimidate him to get into the lineup there.
Gavazzi pulls off the front. And not really pulling back much time on the leader, Sergio Palino, attacking on the last climb and gaining on his advantage. A stage win at the Vuelta this late in the season always helps your contract value. And it looks like Nico Semens is moving off the front of this group. Francesco Gavazzi of Lampre is responding to the attack. And Gavazzi's going to go by him.
Right on by. And a very swift response from everybody in the group there. So this is where they start playing games with each other. If they mess around too much, Palino will ride away and get the win. If they work really well together, they could still bring him back, but they're going to have to cooperate.
Now his lead at 36 seconds. It had grown to over 50 at one point, but now it's coming down. They've taken almost 20 seconds back here. And Gavazzi at the front of this chase group here. So Gavazzi with the acceleration, others responding as they try to pull back Sergio Palino, who attacked on the final climb of the day. Now Davide Malacarne out front, followed by Joaquim Rodriguez, and then Gavazzi, the first 3. And they're chasing this man, Sergio Palino, just about half a minute back as Palino tries to ride into the stage win. He's got 10K left. But he has to sense, though, that they're coming. Attacking on the final climb, got a big gap, but has not been able to hold it on the descent and the flat here. Remember, it'll go downhill once again just before 1 kilometer to the finish. Eases back up inside the final kilometer. Makes a left-hand turn there at 1K to go.
And Polino's been off the front in this group for 100 miles at this point in the bike race. Virtually 100 miles. The low back is killing him right now, and that's why he can't get down and take less wind and be more aero.
The weather is certainly cleared up near the coast as they head towards the beach town of Noha, being used at the Vuelta for the first time ever. Now 5K left, and they've taken back more time, now just 6 seconds.
3 miles. Really coming down to the wire. I don't know if he's going to make it, Steve. This is going to be really touch and go for him. If the guys play a little bit more games behind him, he might be able to squeak back a couple of seconds, but he's going to need that.
Looks like he's running out of road here. Running out of time as the 10 riders are just a couple of seconds back, but they are starting to look around just a little bit here.
Kieserlowski swings off, says, I'm not going to close it down. Genius there for Skill Shimano, also swinging off, so the game playing continues.
Sergio Palino at the top of the screen. 10 riders behind him. And another group a little further back, and then you have the main field that was over 10 minutes back at last check.
He's got to be looking forward and not looking back. Use all that energy to propel yourself. Dig deep, man. It's still possible.
Started as a 17-man breakaway earlier on the stage. They had a lead of almost 12 minutes on the field. Really started to all come apart on the slopes of the Category 1, and they never got back together. Palino attacked on the slopes of the final climb, the Cat 3, the last of 5 climbs on the day. He's been out front since then, but now, even though his lead went out to almost a minute at one point, they're on his heels in the final 4K. 10 riders chasing this man as Radio Shack looks for their first win of this year's Spanish Grand Tour.
Been a tough Grand Tour for him. This would certainly go a long way to easing that pain for one of the finest teams in the world.
Keeps looking back, and there they are. Now some riders starting to give chase, others responding.
And he's on that little tiny hill, that final bump. And look at it, it's on yet again. Really, this is the big moment where they're probably going to start to close it up on him. There he is.
Single file, and just about to bring him all the way back.
That one acceleration on that final little bump, but they're sitting up, and he hasn't been brought back.
All right, just goes from single file to spread out, just like that. When they start to look around, not wanting to take that pull. Just when it looks like they're about to totally absorb him. And now he's down to the final 3K. He's got his head on a swivel as they charge once again. Nico Samen's out front for Cofidis.
And he does still have one more little bump as they come into 2K, so another little hill, that's really gonna hurt.
And it goes downhill from that point to just inside of 1K before it levels out somewhat. Now another acceleration.
Oh, he's in trouble now. He really is in trouble. I don't think he's gonna make it. These guys are gonna suck him up on this little rise.
Juan Rose up there for Euskaltel. It's a stop-start situation for the 10 chasers. They make a dig, they sit up. And now they're going to go across to him finally. That's the Skill Shimano rider.
That's Alexandre Gignes, the Frenchman for Skill Shimano in the group. Palino has been caught. Joaquim Rodriguez is right there. He's got good pop.
And Davide Malacarne for Quick Step now up the right-hand side.
Oh, big move there by Malacarne, trying to get the gap, and he has it.
Little bump here, and then back downhill to the final K.
Gavazzi responding. Gavazzi, the man with the best sprinter's legs in this group. So Gavazzi going across. This would be a huge win for Gavazzi if he could pull this off.
Now Gavazzi coming up on the back here for Lampre. Now calling it Christophe Van de Walle for Quick Step with Francesco Gavazzi. Now he was not listed in the original breakaway. Now we'll see if that graphic is in fact correct. We'll have to check. He wasn't in the breakaway earlier, so curious graphic from Spanish television. We'll check. We'll see. Gavazzi's on his wheel as they come down to it. This is the chase behind. There's single file here. And the two riders out front for Quick Step and Lampre at over 50 kilometers per hour.
Gavazzi never has taken a Grand Tour stage victory. He won stage 5 of the Basque Country earlier this year. He won stage 6 in Portugal. He's also last year won a stage in Basque Country. He always shines in this region of Spain.
Now another rider attacking from the group, going up the left-hand side. It looks like it's an Astana rider.
Kieserlovski, so Kieserlovski's hit out.
Oh, Robert Kieserlovski trying to bridge across with 1K left to go. Now Gavazzi in front of Van de Walle with Kieserlovski chasing. Final kilometer, a little downhill to the finish. Making this left-hand turn. Kieserlovski has just a couple of seconds, but the stage may be decided right here. Van de Walle ahead of Gavazzi.
Another big dig. He knows that he can't out-kick Gavazzi, so he has to try and drop him. 500 to go.
Now Van der Walle doesn't want to lead it out. Gavazzi's on his wheel. That's a perfect place for the Lampre rider. This is exactly where he wants to be after 4.5 hours. Van der Walle knows he's in a tough spot here. Has to keep a check on Gavazzi, who now opens up the sprint. There's the acceleration on the left-hand side. Van der Walle on his wheel. Gavazzi, though, has the top-end speed inside of 100 meters to the line, and Francesco Gavazzi is going to roll into the stage win for Lampre here on stage 18 of the Vuelta.
His first Grand Tour stage win. It looks like Kieserlowski trying to hold on. He doesn't get it. It's the skilled Shimano rider, Geniez, for third.
And the grief coming across for Omega Farmalato, but Lampre, a team that's had some bad luck here, with Alessandro Patacchi missing out on the sprints, Michele Scarpone, their GC leader, abandoning the race, but they finally get the win with Francesco Gavazzi, who's going to go off into the weeds to celebrate.
There you go. That's the way you do it. That was a big effort by him getting across.
That's the only way he was going to stop.
The hands were too tired to touch the brakes.
Now that's one time going off the road that he's not going to mind.
His biggest victory ever in his career. A great sprinter who can climb a little bit. Palino out the back. Looks like he'll be picking up 11th. He risked everything trying to get the stage win. He made it close.
Well, he attacked on the final climb, but was caught inside the final 3K with that lone move. Francesco Gavazzi picks up the stage win. A guy who just turned 27 years of age about a month ago. Biggest victory of his career comes in the final week of the Vuelta a Espana. You're always going to find somebody who's going to sprint for something. There's a finish line, and they're coming from a big group, even though many riders have already finished ahead of them, unless it's a summit finish. But when it's flat like this, guys will always look to race.
1K to go for what's left here of the big peloton. And aborting the mission.
So the field coming in. Again, the stage already decided. Over 4.5 hours for these riders, as Wiggins will lead them in. And not the complicated run into the finish that it was a few days ago. And look at this. Brad Wiggins coming to the front. The red jersey, though, right with him of JJ Cobo, making sure there's no gaps. That's something that Cobo has to be attentive to when he finishes near the front, because even though there were no time bonuses left there, if a gap should have opened up, Cobo could have lost a few seconds to Wiggins. Gavazzi, the Italian, moving to the front and becoming the 10th different first-time Grand Tour stage winner at this Vuelta. Simply unbelievable.
Massive crowds here at the finish line, and they get to see an Italian pick up a Grand Tour stage win in their Grand Tour.
Gavazzi with stage wins at the Tour of the Basque Country each of the last couple of seasons, but it's by far the biggest single victory of his career. And we're back with more on the post-race report presented by SRAM right after this. We continue with the post-race report presented by SRAM. Beach town of Noha, northernmost point of the Vuelta this year, and Francesco Gavazzi celebrating his first ever Grand Tour stage win on the stage of the Vuelta a Portugal earlier this season, and a guy who has had a lot of top fives in some of the bigger races over the course of his career. And I mentioned the win at País Vasco earlier this year as well as last year, but this is a big one for him.
This is huge for him. He actually, the stage in Portugal, they won the final stage. There was a massive crash, and only about 10 guys contested the finish there. And his País Vasco stage win this year, he actually crossed the line second to Oscar Freire. But Freire got disqualified for getting a push from his teammate Sanchez. Still, he's fast, and he's definitely the guy that we would have expected to win from this group. But this is a massive win.
Stage 19 of the Vuelta a Espana, leading into the final weekend that will sort out what has become a two-man race on the general classification, with J.J. Cobo leading Chris Froome by 13 seconds. And with no more summit finishes, J.J. Cobo a bit more comfortable and relaxed in the red jersey as he signed in before the start today of Stage 19, Clown today, starting in yesterday's finish town of Noha, then heading southeast, passing through the finish town of Bilbao 2 different times before they actually end the stage in north-central Spain near the Bay of Biscay.
And several rated climbs along the way for the men as they head out on the 98 miles. 4 climbs in total. They'll do the final climb twice on those circuits at the end. It's a Category 2. It does top out 9 miles from the finish line. So therein lies the crux of today's course. Whether or not Froome will be able to capitalize is anybody's guess at this point.
A pair of Cat 3s and a pair of Cat 2 climbs among the 4 on the profile for stage number 19, the first of the final 3 stages. 4 more climbs tomorrow before the flat stage into Madrid on Sunday. Can anybody get away on that final Cat 2 towards the end of stage 19? Could be very interesting where that is strategically located. This was earlier in Noha. The start of the day. Temperatures in the low 70s at this point as J.J. Cobo and his Geox team would lead the group off the line. 3 more days to Madrid for J.J. Cobo as they cleared the start line along the coast. And temperatures would warm up as they headed southeast and further inland. And the temperature right now hovering right around 100 degrees. They'll head back towards the coast later on in some noticeably cooler temperatures. But it's sunny and hot once again. The warm weather bookending this Vuelta a Espana here in 2011. This is the front of the field, primarily being led by the Liquigas Cannondale team, and that's because the man sitting at the back, Pederson, the youngest guy in the race, who's already won 2 stages, would like to go for the hat trick today. It's a finale that could suit his skills if they bring back a 4-man breakaway that right now has 5 minutes and just under 60 kilometers left to go. The red jersey of J.J. Cobo in an unlikely position, but after some tremendous climbing on back-to-back summit finishes last weekend, including a legendary win on the Angleroo, he's now poised for his first ever Grand Tour win if he can hold off Chris Froome for the next 3 days. They are in the finishing town of Bilbao. That is the Guggenheim Museum, just across the estuary of Bilbao, that riverway that's off to the rider's right. This is the first of 3 passages through Bilbao. And back in the Basque Country now for the first time since 1978. These are our 4 leaders. Alexander Diachenko of Astana, a 27-year-old in his second Vuelta, leading them at the moment as the gap has come down to just under 5 minutes now. It was as high as 6 minutes at one point, and no true threats on the general classification in that 4-man group as you get another look at the Goog.
It's pretty challenging to put something together like that, but sure is nice to look at. Unfortunately, the riders don't get much of a shot to look at it at all, do they, Steve?
And no surprise that Euskaltel would have 2 riders in the breakaway, Igor Anton and Gorka Verdugo, as Euskaltel is a Basque-based team. So certainly a huge day for them coming back to the Basque Country. And wanting to have guys up the road with a chance to win the stage here on stage 19. This is the Road ID stage profile. The red line is the leaders. A couple of Cat 2s still to go. Those are the same climbs. They'll do the same Cat 2 twice here in the last half of the stage. Pair of Cat 3s in the rear view mirror. And everybody rolling along through town now with 58 kilometers left to go. There's an intermediate sprint. Also the second time through Bilbao. So some more bonus time and points available as Jaime Zubeldia is lending a hand to the chase along with Liquigas.
Van Summeren, the very tall rider up there on the front, setting the tempo for Jaime Zubeldia. And the Director General of the Vuelta, Javier Guillen, has talked about how excited he is and pleased to bring the race back to the Basque region after 33 years. Just how it's the best support in terms of quantity and quality from the fans in this region of the country.
And Liquigas. Their one bright spot has been Pederson. The 21-year-old has won 2 stages because Vincenzo Nibali, who came as the GC leader trying to defend his Vuelta title from a year ago, has been disappointing. Faded several days ago, was not able to hang in the mountains last weekend, so he dropped out of GC contention. So now, boy, if Sagan could get the win today, come away from his first Grand Tour with 3 stage wins, how huge would that be?
It would be huge, and I certainly would think he would be the favorite today, Steve. I think that the breakaway has very little chance of staying away, even though it's highly motivated with 2 riders from the Basque region in it. The motivation of Liquigas Cannondale as well as Garmin Cervelo on the front, I think, is going to prove to be too much for them.
And the 2 Basque riders in the middle, Igor Anton and Gorka Verdugo. It was back in 1978 when Basque separatists disrupted the Vuelta to a point where one stage had to be abandoned. They threw barricades. They did everything to disrupt the rhythm and the flow of the race, so they had to basically call off a stage. And because of the political infighting, the Vuelta has not been back since. But they've decided that the political situation is more stable now. Spanish soccer teams come to the Basque region without any sort of trouble, so it was time for the Spanish Grand Tour to also make it back to this Basque country that's really the soul of cycling in so many people's minds. So the Fairman group continues to roll along, just under 5 minutes ahead of the field.
They've actually been talking for the last couple of days as the race has been marching closer to the Basque region, that the fans have been coming out more and more in support of them. And they've been really excited to finally be in their home Grand Tour in their own region of Spain. So I think that we're going to see a lot of people coming out in the next couple of days and really showing the support for that squad in particular. But there's some other guys, and Chosti on the Movistar team is also Basque, so there's some other Basque men in the race.
Tony Martin of HTC High Road not starting the race today, turning his attention towards the time trial at the World Championships in Copenhagen in just a couple of weeks. Igor Anton has suffered on the climbs. A guy who won a stage at the Giro on the legendary Zoncolan earlier this year, but built his entire season around this Vuelta a Espana. Went south in a hurry, now trying to salvage something here in the final weekend. Liquigas also looking to make amends for the less than stellar showing of Vincenzo Nibali. And Pederson get his 3rd stage win today.
And some cones there right on the center of the road. Really dangerous whenever you have those in a professional bike race or an amateur race. Look at how it just goes right through the middle of the field. Guys can't see them. It causes crashes very often.
Unlike yesterday when the break got almost 12 minutes at one point, today it's been reasonably kept within arm's length. Got up to close to 6 minutes at one point, but down to 4.5 right now with just over 50K left.
If the break had 10 minutes right now, I'd say they have a really good chance of staying away. But with this type of a gap, I just don't see it happening. The motivation from the field will be very high today because guys like Sagan know they can win today.
And it was a 17-man breakaway yesterday. It started to split up on a Cat 1 climb, came down to 10 guys, but still they had a lot more horsepower to work with than what they have up there with the 4 guys today. Anton has now moved to the front.
Anton winning a couple of stages of the Vuelta last year, crashing out partway through, a couple weeks into the race. And unfortunately, he was a guy that many thought maybe would hold that jersey all the way to the end. He came back to try and take the jersey and the defense away from Nibali for this year, but neither of those two have really had a particularly great race.
2 Garmin boys have come to the front of the Liquigas train at the front of the field with exactly 50K left to go for the leaders, and the lead hovering at 4.5 minutes. Well, every year, of course, we have the Vuelta a País Vasco, the Tour of the Basque Country that takes place in the Basque region of northern Spain, and you always see the passion of the cycling fans, just how crazy, colorful, and festive they are. some of the most passionate cycling fans in the entire world, so it only makes sense that the Vuelta would go back. It seemed like there was such a disconnect and no real reason over 3 decades later why the Vuelta shouldn't be back in this region that loves the sport like no other.
And in fact, yesterday's stage winner, Francesco Gavazzi, the first Italian winner of a stage at this year's Vuelta. He's won a couple of stages in País Vasco. He always tends to ride well in this part of Spain.
Just about to begin the Category 2 climb that'll summit with just inside of 45K left to go. First of 2 times up this Cat 2 in the final 50 kilometers of today's stage 19. And the 4-man breakaway led by the Basque-based Euskaltel team still cranking along. The main field just starting the Cat 2 climb. Team Sky is up front along with Geox, 4.5 minutes behind a 4-man breakaway that's already going up the climb with some huge crowds lining the roads. This is the back of the field. Stain de Volder, the Vacansoleil rider, number 212, bringing up the tail end.
Stain really known as a classic type of rider, and actually Vacansoleil was saying he was one of their GC men coming into this Vuelta, but that always seemed a little far-fetched with the size of these mountains.
Now a symbolically poignant, competitively significant, and culturally profound day with the Vuelta returning to the Basque Country. And the fans, the moment is not lost on them, even though this is a Cat 2 climb. A large number have turned out. Almost looks like a true summit finish the further they go up the climb, as Sky has come to the front. And the crowds will get thicker the further up the climb they go, where it hits 10% a little ways up.
I think part of the significance of today, Steve, is the fact that right at the bottom of the climb is Igor Anton's hometown, Galdacao. So he's off in the break, and a lot of people in this region know him very well.
He lives just outside of Bilbao, and they'll make their way back to the finishing town 2 more times now.
Marzio Bruzaguin on the front there, right behind him Diachenko, and then the 2 men in orange. Bruzaguin, also known as a guy who raises mooli, and he often has friends out on the course and fans with little caps that have ears on them. Any idea what mooli are, Steve?
Something that has ears.
Mules. He's a mule raiser. He lives in northern Italy in the Dolomiti region, and he raises mules, and his fans have caps with ears. Craziness.
I hear those crowds we talked about. Here's Sepp Ben Marca. Remember, he crashed several days ago into a ravine. Had to be helped out with a long stick by officials of the race. It was so steep, he was trying to climb out with his bike.
Sky obviously interested in trying to continue to fight for these seconds for Froome. He only needs the 13 seconds. So putting guys on the front, helping keep the pace hard. You can see Kobo in red right there, though, just a few wheels back.
Now Movistar, a team that's been hit hard by food poisoning. Lost 4 guys from their team along the way. Also, Imanol Urvidi and Benyard and Chosti yesterday were riding near the back for Movistar because they were still suffering symptoms. Marzio there up front, one of only 2 riders who has been free of those 6 symptoms. JJ Kobo staying near the front. That's because Team Sky is controlling the pace at the front end of the field. And look, it's starting to splinter behind them.
Big time. There's a lot of damage being done in the field. And a little surprising to me that we don't see like a Menchov or a De La Fuente right there in front of Kobo, but maybe Kobo just likes that clean shot.
This is back to our 4 leaders. 2 Euskaltel riders at the back. Remember, they will do this climb twice. This is the first of the 2 times up. As Verdugo is exchanging words with some of the orange-clad fans. Could be more people than what we saw in the Angleroo.
It's massive, and not even a massive climb, but still the people just coming out in droves. Wiggins there in the white jersey as the British road champion. And he's got Lofquist on the front, Kobo in red, the leader just a couple wheels behind him.
And Chris Froome sitting right behind Wiggins. He's also in a white jersey. He's sitting second in the combined competition. Kobo is leading that classification, but obviously Kobo wears red as the race leader, so by default the white jersey goes to Chris Froome. So you have Wiggins, Froome, and Kobo in that order, riding near the front, with Thomas Lofquist of Sky controlling things at the very front of the peloton.
We may not be seeing an attack out of that field of contenders this time up the climb, but the way Sky's riding right now, I think they're going to try something the next time.
Just the first of 2 times up this climb. The Cat 2 approaching the summit. Gorka Verdugo leading the way for Euskaltel. There's the banner marking the top of the climb. Back to Lofquist. Looks like Verdugo's going to lead him over.
Diachenko suffering just a little bit over the top. He's a man who really likes the classics. These climb a little bit long for him.
So that summit with 44.4 kilometers left to go in the stage. We'll come off the descent, go back into Bilbao, have an intermediate sprint in town with just over 30K left, and then they'll tackle that same Cat 2 again. Next time it'll summit with just over 14K remaining to the finish, once again back in Bilbao. 15K banner for the peloton.
So they're just under a kilometer from the summit of this climb.
I should say 15K banner that they just went through now. That'll be the next time through.
Yeah.
It'll be 15K to go in the stage. The banner there all day long, but since they do the climb twice, basically double what you just saw.
They'll see it a couple of times.
Yeah. Peloton coming through the corridor. Sky's certainly riding with a purpose out front.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they're not playing their cards very close to their chest. And today is really a reasonably good option out of all the remaining days. This may be the best chance to try and get away late on this climb. And the field not very big. It's definitely thinned out a lot.
Back of the field. And the waves to the top. Marco Marzano, the Italian from Lampre, coming off their first stage win yesterday with Francesco Gavazzi, who became the first Italian to win a stage at this year's race.
Hard to imagine that many days in. Took 18 stages for an Italian to get a win.
So the clock will count to where the peloton comes over the summit. So they've taken more time out.
No real surprise to see that gap coming down as the field continues to ramp up the pressure for that general classification battle.
Now the concern for J.J. Kobo then becomes, once the brake is pulled back with Sky riding at the front, that all of a sudden means that the time bonuses at the finish and at that next intermediate sprint come into play. Now, they've got to worry about everybody else who's thinking about perhaps a stage win. But when you have time bonuses then available because the brake has been brought back, plus any gaps that may form with Wiggins and Froome trying to attack there late, that doubles the concern for J.J. Kobo in the red jersey as our 4-man group rolls along on the descent here with just over 40K left.
I don't think that the breakaway has any chance of getting caught before that intermediate sprint because it's pretty quick right after the bottom of this descent. but still, those time bonuses at the finish line could very well be in play, and they're massive.
They've got about 10K left to go to the intermediate sprint. It's now 2.5 minutes back to the front of this field where our top GC guys are located. Chris Froome, Jajenko, and Brad Wiggins, who right now is sitting second wheel to his teammate Thomas Löfqvist. Interesting stage unfolding in the Basque Country. These are the 4 leaders on the descent of the Category 2. Now back to the front of the field, single file as the speed picks up. Gap down to just over 2 minutes with 36.5 kilometers left to go. So they are just about 5K away from the intermediate sprint back in the finishing town of Bilbao. From there, they tackle the same Cat 2 they just did. And then it's back down into Bilbao for the finish of the stage. So bonus time available at the intermediate sprint and at the finish of the stage. Going to be difficult for Froome or Wiggins to catch the break in time to get those bonus seconds of 6.4 and 2 seconds for the first 3 across at the intermediate sprint. But it looks like they're in position to bring them back by the end of the stage. So it potentially opens up the bigger time bonus of 20, 12, and 8 seconds for the first 3 at the end of the day.
And honestly, the way Sky is riding right now, it looks like they're going to unload everything they have in their arsenal between now and the final climb. Keep it hot, as high as possible, drill it into the base of the climb, and then see if they can try and launch Froome somehow in a last-ditch effort.
Well, the only problem is going to be once they get to the summit of that last climb, it's still over 14K to the finish, and it's not a very technical descent coming off that climb, so there's opportunity if Kobo is even dropped to catch back on.
A lot of opportunity, and you can see here Dominic Nares just giving a little shove to his teammate there. Sometimes that's actually more efficient than riding around him. You just come up on him in the draft, give him a little push, and he'll close down the gap to the field.
It's the 5K banner, but again, that's not to the end of the stage. Once they come around the next time, it'll be 5K left to go to the end of the day. Riding back with the Guggenheim Museum over their right shoulder. In the town where the Spanish Civil War started. The old town of Bilbao. And these riders trying to hang on to their margin for as long as possible, but Team Sky putting Thomas Löfqvist at the front of the peloton, really intent on bringing it back before they get to the base of the climb for the second time, and then we will see this race come apart at the front. Guys will be attacking. That'll be the red kite and 1 kilometer to go next time through for the end of the stage. But again, this is the second of 3 times through the town of Bilbao, as Wiggins has moved to the back of this group. Tail end of the field.
Interesting to see Wiggins back here at this moment. Somewhat critical moment of the bike race because we know it's going to go ballistic on the climb, but I guess he has a little bit of time to still get back up there.
Coming into the intermediate sprint point. These guys not racing for the points or the time. And this is just fine for Jajenko and Geox, that they eat up the time that's available there. They won't have to sprint for any time with Chris Froome.
It also works out very well in the favor of Joaquim Rodriguez, who took over the points classification competition yesterday. Took it back from Bach Mollema. Rodriguez has said his sole purpose in the race at this point is to try and keep the points classification lead until the end of the race.
So that'll be the finish line in another 31.6 kilometers. We'll do a big loop. Head back out to the same Cat 2 they ascended a little while ago, and then drop back into town for the end of the stage at the same point. And we'll see how far back the field is now. Coming up on the red kite. See the ship in the distance. This is a port town. It has a shipping history. Helped drive the economic engine early on for Bilbao. Also a well-known industrial town, in addition to its shipping background. As the 4 leaders start to head out of town now. And Lofquist will lead the group through, followed by Radio Shack, Geox, Rabobank, Leopard Trek, and Lampre with Katusha behind. So a virtual smorgasbord of teams here at the front.
And not all that big a group left. I see Sastre sitting third wheel. Menchov, another teammate of Kobo, about 10 wheels back.
Kobo just ahead of Rodriguez, who was just ahead of Chris Froome. So you have the red, green, and white jerseys all in a row. And then Brad Wiggins has made it back up to just behind his teammate Chris Froome. And they are now under 2 minutes back at 1:46. So a reduced main field of the top GC riders. 146 behind the four-man group, and now Gorka Verdugo, it looks like, on the move from the four-man breakaway. So one of two Euskaltel riders in the move today. And Verdugo now riding out by himself as they head out towards the Cat 2 climb. Well, he's by himself because he had a mechanical, so he's chasing back on.
It does not help the chances of the breakaway whatsoever when one of the four gets a puncture.
So he'll try and catch back on to the other three breakaway riders as they ride around the estuary of Bilbao with the chase on single file from the field. Come back for that Cat 2 climb. This is going to be good. .126 is the margin from the front of this field to what is now a three-man breakaway, because Alexander Diachenko of Espana, part of a four-man move earlier, has dropped off. As Thomas Lofquist sets the pace for Team Sky, and the margin coming down ever so slightly. And still several teams with riders at the front: Radio Shack, Geox, Lampre, Katusha, Rabobank. Carlos Sastre sitting third wheel for Geox.
Lofquist, after a pole like this, is going to explode in spectacular fashion on the climb. Back up to the break, Igor Anton leading his teammate Verdugo.
After the mechanical, Verdugo is caught back on. They waited for him. They wanted to have that extra muscle in the move, try and stay away as long as possible. But as you can see, Diachenko nowhere to be found.
Diachenko was starting to suffer. He has been dropped. So now it is the two Euskaltel riders, as well as Bruce Seguin, the Movistar man.
.133 now back to the field that entered the Basque Country for the first time today, 60 kilometers into the stage. They finished today in the Basque Country, also spend tomorrow in this region of north-central Spain. And finishing in Bilbao along the Bay of Biscay. And this is our Road ID stage profile. The red line, the leaders, just before that same Cat 2 they did a short while ago. The fourth of four climbs on the day. Now they start the Cat 2 climb for the second time. And this time around, it'll summit with just over 14 kilometers left to go in the stage. We saw how active it was the first time up, just how many fans there were. It's going to be crazy this next time over the summit. And a rider going off the front of the field, it looked like here. It is Perito, Joaquim Rodriguez, attacking in the green jersey as the climb gets underway.
Interesting to see him testing. Actually, before the race, he said that for sure Wiggins and Sky will fight, but they will not be able to get the jersey from Kobo. But he wanted to try and capitalize on that fight.
And Anton opening up some daylight on the lower slopes of the climb. He wants it in his home region today. You can tell. Igor Anton trying to bounce back.
Well, he had his teammate Gorka Verdugo empty himself completely on the flat section leading up to the climb. Give him as much time as possible, as much rest as possible, and now he's got to try and do it.
Meantime, Rodriguez with some other riders trying to come across from the front of the GC group.
So the Leopard Trek rider coming across.
And back to Anton out front. About to have four riders here in this group, it looks like. Leopard, also Chris Anker Sorensen, and an AG2R rider, it looks like, has made it onto the back.
So four men popping off the field.
But this is our leader, Igor Anton. This is the only climb that he hasn't struggled on so far at this year's Vuelta. Well, Perito has been dropped. Thomas Rohriger and Perget are the other two with Sorensen. So Perget, the rider from AG2R, and Thomas Rohriger, the Austrian from Leopard. The three now as the second group on the road, as Rodriguez is struggling to maintain contact with these three.
Rohriger, a great climber himself, often helping the team leaders in the mountains, but Antone still up out of the saddle, driving toward the summit of his final climb.
But remember, it's not a summit finish. He'll still have over 14K left to go to the finish back in Bilbao when he crests the top of the climb. So riders going off the front of the field. It looked like one of the Lampre riders was making a move. And also one of the Euskaltel riders, perhaps Mikhail Nieve, who's their highest placed on the GC, launching an attack from the front of this group. It's a smaller main field, but the top GC guys are here. They're all on the climb.
Verdugo getting picked up by the group led by Sorensen.
Rohriger behind, as well as Perget of AG2R. Joaquim Rodriguez still in the distance there with the green jersey, and the Euskaltel rider coming up to the back of him from the field, along with the Lampre man as well. So the field not too far behind these three, who are the second group on the road. Look how small this pack is.
Well, certainly Verdugo going back. He'll have tried to save a little energy so that he can help any of his teammates if, in fact, they are trying to attack out of this group.
Red jersey is near the front. And this is back to the very front. Igor Antone, our lone leader. Winner of the Stage 14 summit finish on the mythical Monte Zoncolan at the Giro this year. Third overall at Castilla y León. Fifth at Flèche Wallonne. So some impressive performances so far this year, but he designed his entire season around this one race, and it's been his most disappointing of the entire campaign. But to win in the home region of the Euskaltel team, the Basque Country, that they are visiting for the first time in over 3 decades, it may not erase the disappointment of not winning the red jersey this year, but it would be a huge bonus nonetheless. This is back to the GC group, content to mark one another. Left-hand side of your screen is Wiggins, behind him Froome, and off Froome's left shoulder is the red jersey of J.J. Koba.
Very interesting not to see this group absolutely throwing down. I expected this to be the full gauntlet right here with Skymen just using everything to make it wicked. It looks like Sastre going off the back, and indeed it is.
He rode near the front behind Thomas Lopquist for a while. As we slide back to Igor Antone.
Got to be incredibly motivating for Antone. So close. He lives at the bottom of the climb, and having everybody know who he is and yell his name.
All right, so Rodriguez, who attacked before, has been brought back by the front of that small main field. And the lead, just over 2 minutes, out to this man, Igor Antone.
Races in my career, Steve, where the crowd literally would give you so much energy, you would have goosebumps up and down your body.
And still holding serve back at the front of that group, but Vincenzo Nibali is coming off the back end.
Wow, Nibali not expected to be off the back on a day like this. He did crash right at the start of the race just before it started, but still, he said he was okay.
Still Wiggins, Froome, and Kobo at the front of that group.
Yeah, Marzio Brusaguin fighting on, been dropped by Antone. He's out there in no man's land.
tighter here. Wiggins still at the front. Oh, now Perito is coming off the back. He's behind Nibali. He surged 2 times earlier and now paying for it as Wiggins cranks out the tempo just ahead of Froome.
Nibali having an up and down race, as is Rodriguez.
Here's the top of the climb for Anto. He's the leader. Now 14 kilometers away from the finish and a stage win in his home Basque Country. And now
Froome is gone.
A big attack from Froome, but Kobo's on his wheel.
Kobo right there. Froome is going to have to bomb this descent. It's not very tricky. A slight gap right now.
Still headed towards the summit here, but Froome unleashing a huge move. J.J. Kobo responding, trying to get around the motorbikes and the fans.
Well, we knew it was coming, and they're just lighting up the top of the climb.
And the fans may be helping J.J. Kobo because it's so narrow there. Froome may have had to back off a little. This is the leader of the stage, though, Igor Anton. He was leading those guys by a little more than 2 minutes just a short while ago.
And now Kobo is still sitting right there in the crowd.
Now they picked up Perget of AG2R. Meto Perget was just in front of them. Froome now sits up because he sees Kobo is on his wheel.
So hard to get rid of a guy when he's just watching your every pedal stroke. Kobo needs to not get in front of Froome. He needs to make sure Froome does not get the element of surprise on him.
It was a vicious attack. Perget had attacked with Chris Anker Sorensen, so he was already up the road. They've caught him, and it looks like they're going to drop him. And now Mikel Nieve has entered the fray. Number 54 for Euskaltel.
Nieve comes in 10th in the GC, but Froome's going again.
He's not giving up. He wants those 13 seconds back. And remember, bonus time at the finish, 2012 and 8 seconds. Igor Anton, the leader.
Perget has been popped. Nieve trying to go around. Froome has to keep the pressure on. This is the race.
This is the summit of the climb.
And no daylight there. Kobo, defiant in his holding on to the jersey, not letting Froome get an inch.
Now, 14 kilometers to the finish. Igor Anton out front. He's dropped his Movistar breakaway companion. So if these guys can somehow catch up, they could perhaps ride into bonus time, and then it could be a fight for those.
They're not going to catch up, though. Nieve going on the attack, but Froome doesn't care. He was just on his radio a second ago telling his teammates he didn't drop Kobo. That's the deflating moment.
So Nieve has moved to the front of this group. Froome sitting second, and then Kobo third. It would be tough to make the catch. Since there's no more uphill roads, it's basically all downhill the rest of the way.
Well, and the issue is that Kobo's not going to help. He's going to sit on Froome all the way. Nieve almost getting pinched off the road there. But Kobo will sit on Froome all the way and out-sprint him if Froome tows him up to the finish line.
Igor Anton, the leader, going over the summit and still on the road, is setting the pace at the front of stage 19 with just over 11 kilometers left to go. For J.J. Kobo, it's just fine that these guys ahead eat up those time bonuses. Froome needs them. Without anybody to really help share the workload, it's tough to bring back that gap that was just over 2 minutes to Anton near the top of the climb.
Anton was going up the climb very well, I have to say. He looked more like his usual self. However, this part of the course, the 9 miles to the finish, that's where he's going to struggle just a little more. He's not a great time trialist.
Nieve setting the pace for Euskaltel, just ahead of Froome and Kobo. And they're chasing the stage leader right now, Igor Anton. They have gone over all 4 climbs on the day here on stage 19. 9 kilometers left to go for our leader, Igor Anton. Has a gap of half a minute right now. This is the chase from the field.
Liquigas Cannondale all over the front of the field. They desperately want to bring back Igor Antone and vie for the sprint win.
Now remember, towards the summit of the climb before Chris Froome attacked, J.J. Kobo responded. Antone's teammate Mikhail Nieve made it up to those two, so riding as a group of 3 just off the front of the field. Now Antone by himself with 8K left to go back into Bilbao, where the stage will finish.
It's a big gap. We just saw a 2-minute gap for Antone. That's a lot of time for the field to make up in 8 kilometers. It's going to be really tough for them to get all that time back.
Antone typically wins on a big summit finish, but with all of those now in the rear-view mirror, this is all that's left. But since it's in his home Basque country, he attacked early because he wanted to have this margin to work with coming into the final kilometers that are all downhill.
Take every opportunity you see, and he saw one today. And look at this, the field kind of easing back just a little bit.
Now Froome and Kobo are sitting right in the middle of this pack.
They've been sucked up as they had absolutely no cooperation in their group. Kobo had no incentive to ride. He just wanted to sit on the wheel of Froome. If Froome towed him to the finish, well, he wouldn't have much of a sprint left.
Well, at least Froome tried. It wasn't any kind of passive riding over the summit. He gave it a go. It's really all you can ask. It was going to be tough anyway.
Yeah, obviously the cards were stacked against him. Kobo knew that he had one guy to follow.
Spaniard from Movistar has been dropped by Antone, who now leads him by over half a minute. So Igor Antone just trying to time trial in for the stage win, but time trialing is not a strong suit. However, in this case, with the historical weight of being back in the Basque country, maybe he'll add a little extra to the legs here.
I mean, if that last time gap was correct at 2 minutes, I don't see how the field is going to catch him. Only 6K to go. That's pretty much impossible. We're just getting the time gaps right now to Brusseguin at 31 seconds, but let's get the real time check here for the field at 6K to go.
That'll be interesting in the final few K. They have a 360-degree turn at 2K left to go. Then they'll make a 90-degree right-hand turn at a roundabout at 500 meters to go to the finish line. But the team wants this win so bad, they're telling Antone about what lies ahead on the road. Those 2 turns I just mentioned, plus the fact that it's downhill from 2.5K to about 900 meters to the finish before it flattens out. So they have to be making him aware of what's to come on the road in these final 5K, as well as giving him just that emotional motivation, that encouragement to keep pushing forward and not let up here.
Mostly downhill, just some little bumps that he has to go over. Brusseguin still trying to get up there.
Doesn't seem to be closing it down. He was dropped by Antone on that last climb, and still hovering at just over half a minute behind.
That looks like he just lost a couple of seconds in the last kilometer. Antone finally might be tasting that sweet taste of victory at the Vuelta, getting a stage. This one in the bag, barring something really going wrong for him, like a crash or a major mechanical.
Now we see Jaime Zubeldia of Radio Shack here. He was in the top 10 for a while at this race.
Zubeldia also a Basque rider himself.
Disappointment to continually fade on the GC as the second half of the race has unfolded, but a lot of these Basque riders who don't all ride for the Euskaltel team, they want to have their moment in the spotlight today as well, and just get as high a finish as you possibly can.
Heck yeah, 3rd place on the day in the Basque region after 33 years of not being here. That's worth going for.
Riding away to the stage win. And this is Dominique Neers, the German for Liquigas Cannondale, coming up to the back of Jaime Zubeldia. This is just off the front of the field.
Looks like the field left a little too late to be able to bring back Antone. That gap was coming down, but the final time up the climb, he extended it with a very impassioned ride up the climb.
Igor Antone, the Basque rider for the Basque team, back in the Basque country for the first time since 1978. With his hometown lying just outside of Bilbao, what a moment this should be for him. Not having to really fight it out for the stage win. He can soak it up at the line, provided he maintains this margin and really let the moment wash over him. Bilbao. Antone won his first stage of the Vuelta 5 years ago. This will be victory number 4 at the Spanish Grand Tour. He'll go along with 1 stage win at the Giro, 2 stages at the Tour de Romandie, and 1 at the Tour de Suisse. And now a battle for second place unfolding here.
Yeah, looks like they have Bruzagin in their sights. Inside that final kilometer, last corner here for Igor Antone.
He sees the gap is big enough, he can celebrate. A Basque rider winning in the Basque country for the first time in over 3 decades. Disappointment behind him. The celebration is now for Euskaltel and Igor Antone.
So incredibly huge in front of all his hometown fans in the Basque region. He's massive. Bruzagin still soldiering on for second.
It was part of the 4-man breakaway. Got dropped on that last climb. Zubeldia and Neers had just about made it up to the back of him, attacking from the field, but it looks like they never did catch on fully. So he'll ride into second. Salvaging something for the Movistar team that's been depleted because of illness in the final week.
One of only 4 guys on that squad remaining in the bike race.
Looks like a Garmin Cervelo rider, perhaps. No, it's Chris Anker Sorensen of Saxobank. So the Garmin Cervelo rider back with that next group that includes the red jersey. And watch out, Chris Froome just ahead of the red jersey here. This is the next group on the road, but the red jersey group right behind these 3. They are right on their back wheels as they approach the finish line.
And remember, this is the sprint for third. Zubeldia leading it out.
Neers coming through. Well, it looks like Dominique Neers is going to finish third with Zubeldia 4th, Anker Sorensen 5th. Then the red jersey group just behind them. And Froome and Kova will both get the same time along with Wiggins. But it's Igor Antone, the Euskaltel rider, winning in his home region today on stage 19. Today belongs to Igor Antone in front of his home Basque fans. 28-year-old. Certainly a glorious moment, even though the plan was for him to be wearing the red jersey entering the Basque country. It did not work out that way, and they've really known for quite some time that that wasn't going to happen. So all of the attention turned to just trying to win the stage, and he won it convincingly today.
It really looks like equal parts relief as well as elation for him to be on the podium. And remember, this is the guy who crashed out last year at the base of the Peña Cabarga while he was leading the race, and 2 years before that he crashed out and broke his hip before the summit finish at the Angleroo. So he's a great rider, but he has had some crashes that have really negatively impacted his career.
It's the second to last day of the Vuelta a Espana, but the last real chance for any meaningful changes on the top of the general classification. J.J. Cobo leads Chris Froome by 13 seconds, which may not seem like a lot, but without any summit finishes or an individual time trial, there's no opportunity to get that big separation that you need to recover. So once again, back in the Basque Country of northern Spain for the first time in over 3 decades, starting today in yesterday's finish town of Bilbao, and then heading mostly south into the Basque capital of Vitoria for the finish today. First time visiting Vitoria for the Vuelta a Espana since 1972.
I certainly appreciate being back in the Basque region. It's going to be another hot day. It's not too mountainous. There are a couple of category 1s. There's a category 2, a category 3 climb, but the final climb is 29 miles from the finish. So once again, as you look at that profile, even though there's climbing, it's early. There's plenty of time for Cobo to chase Froome if Froome gets away. And I think the biggest potential for separation would be if these crosswinds that are starting to crop up materialize a little bit. That really can blow the field apart.
The final 4 of 46 rated climbs at this year's Vuelta a Espana. And this was earlier today at the sign-in in Bilbao. J.J. Cobo just 2 days away from winning his first ever Grand Tour. The 30-year-old who has certainly had a turbulent last few months, but poised for the biggest win of his career if he can keep it together for the next 48 hours. Rolling out in front of huge crowds on the final Saturday of the Vuelta. Neutral start with Joaquim Rodriguez next to him in the green jersey of the points competition leader.
And there's really a lot of reason for Cobo to be nervous right now. He's the man with the most to lose. Everybody else, if they have a bad day, they don't lose everything.
Perito, after a few crashes at this year's Vuelta, hopes to hang on to that green jersey as Cobo hopes to hang on to red. So they're out on the road, and we'll come back with the live racing of stage 20 at the Vuelta a Espana right after this. This is live at the front of the field on stage 20 of the Vuelta a Espana. We have the peloton chasing a large breakaway group of over 20 riders that have a gap of 1.5 minutes. The leaders are climbing the Cat 3 Alto de Canpazar that will summit with 73 kilometers left to go in the stage. It's the penultimate climb of the day. After that Cat 3, they have a Cat 1 that'll be coming up in the final 50 kilometers. Daniela Bonatti, number 101 for Leopard Trek, one of the 26 riders in this large breakaway group. Highest placed rider on the general classification is Nicolas Roche, the Irishman from AG2R, 10.5 minutes behind J.J. Cobo on the GC.
It's a lot easier to let a big group like this get up the road late in the race, because after 20 days of racing, there are big time gaps, and you can let a big group go and nobody can be close in the general classification.
167 riders left in the Vuelta, and another hot day for them to tackle in north central Spain. Temperature inching north of 100 degrees for the second consecutive day, but they're getting closer. Finally coming to the end of the Vuelta tomorrow with the traditional parade into the Spanish capital of Madrid on stage 21. Radio Shack coming to the front of the peloton. They are without a stage win at this year's race, so they are doing some of the work to bring back those guys out front. 13 different teams have won a stage. That's over half the number of the teams in the race this year, but Radio Shack, one of those that have missed out so far. And now let's take you to the Road ID stage profile for this 20th day of the 66th Vuelta a Espana. So the leaders now have gone over that Cat 3 and headed towards the Cat 1, the final climb of the Vuelta, coming up shortly. And now just inside of 60K left to go.
So part of the significance of the day, as you can see, this Katusha rider dispensing drinks to the rest of his team. When they have this big group off the front, that means no time bonuses available to battle out for the general classification guys back in the field. They've gone through the final intermediate sprint at 65.8K. So no points available there for Froome or Kobo.
And again, it just highlights the difficult nature of the task facing Chris Froome and Team Sky. He's not just battling J.J. Kobo and his Geox team. He's battling every other team and every other rider in the race that is going for something else, whether it's intermediate sprints, whether it's some of the small climbs, whether it's to get in a breakaway and try and win a stage. All of those other ambitions work against Chris Froome, who's just going for the GC.
Yeah, one of the things that Sky tried really hard to do was to get Ian Standard, one of Chris's teammates, tried to get him into position to get the first intermediate sprint yesterday, but they missed out on it. So they were going for him, but they just couldn't get it. A little bit of wind.
A little bit of everything on the profile today. Some steep climbs, some open plains in northern Spain for the riders to navigate. And a little activity here at the front of the group. Guys starting to look around as, with the margin coming down inside of 1 minute, we may see some attacks from the front of this breakaway group, and indeed some riders trying to get off the front.
The breakaway group certainly doesn't look like it is poised to stay away, so guys will have to get antsy here and try and pop off the front of this group before the field catches up to them.
And several teams in this group have more than one rider, so you do have teammates who can work together, which is always a plus. Lampre, in fact, with 3 different riders having made the move today.
Highest placed man in the break is Nicholas Roche, the Irishman, and he is 10.5 minutes down in the general classification, so certainly was a great opportunity for the Geox team to let it go, soak up the time bonuses on the intermediate sprints, and then make the other teams in the race do the work to chase him back.
Starting to get on the lower slopes of the climb right now. One of the riders trying to sneak away on the front. That might be Steven Kruijswijk of Rabobank. Well, now it's actually Barreto. Carlos Barreto, one of a couple of different Rabobank riders.
Barreto, a former stage winner at the Vuelta in his home Grand Tour, always highly motivated.
Barreto's a guy who soloed to stage wins before, and now taking off on the final climb. Other riders responding here as it kicks up to over 11%. The maximum is 13% on this climb. Averages 9% over the 5.5 kilometers that the riders will climb here.
It's a pretty hard climb, even though it's not super long. Just over 3 miles, almost 3.5 miles. It is pretty steep at 9% average, so we're going to see a lot happening on this climb.
Some riders already losing contact. 92 was Marco Marzano, the Italian for Lampre. And there's the gap to the riders who are clinging to the front. This Kruijswijk for Rabobank there. And just ahead of him is teammate Barreto riding at the front.
Another hot day for these guys. It was hot yesterday as well.
Amit Chiruka is the Euskaltel rider who is up there.
And Robert Kieserlowski as well, second wheel, the man riding in the light blue of Astana.
And this is back to the field. Radio Shack and Geox, the 2 teams up there, with Rabobank and Vacan Soleil, a few riders just behind. Well, remember yesterday, it was the final of 4 climbs where Chris Froome attacked the red jersey of J.J. Kobo. He stayed on his wheel and nullified the move. This is the last climb of the entire race, so we'll wait and see if Froome tries to make another move here. But if he does, J.J. Kobo says he's more confident today than he was yesterday because he knows this climb well. He's trained on it. He knows its subtleties, so he's not concerned. Just has to make sure that he's well positioned if Froome does attack, that he's on his wheel right away.
It's definitely helpful to know the climbs. Even yesterday, Igor Anton, he said he'd probably ridden that final climb hundreds of times in his life. He knew every inch of the roadway because he lived right by the bottom of it. He said it really helped him having all those fans out there yelling his name as well as knowing the climb.
J.J. Kobo riding just off the right shoulder of Chris Froome at the back of the front of the field right now. This is back to the leading group on the road. Carlos Barreto, Robert Kieserlowski, Still over 10% here on this Cat 1 climb.
So Christophe Lemavelle in there for Garmin Cervelo. French rider who's struggled just a little bit in this Vuelta, crashing very early on. That really kind of set up a little bit of a bad cycle for him. Tough to sleep, had to recover from injury, but he said he's been feeling better and better.
Remember, Lemavelle rode so well on the GC at the Giro d'Italia this year. But so far for Garmin Cervelo, it has not been a good Vuelta, with Tyler Farah, their top sprinter, crashing out on stage 7. They did get the win with Dan Martin on the summit finish at La Covatia. He's missed out on some other opportunities, though. So now Lemavelle really showing himself for the first time.
Martin was really a bright spot to see him riding so incredibly well at this year's Vuelta. And honestly, Lemavelle, I mean, the guy in the Giro was so close to getting in the pink jersey, the Maglia Rosa, as the overall leader, but he never quite got it. He would miss out just by a time bonus here or there in that first week.
And this is back to Igor Anton, who's further down the road behind the field. Yesterday's winner. This has been more of a familiar spot for him, trailing the field as opposed to leading it the way he did yesterday.
Anton has red jersey, red numbers on his jersey because he was most aggressive yesterday on the way to that win.
This is the Category 1 climb, the final ascent of this year's Vuelta a Espana. Just inside of 50K left to go to the finish, 3K left in the climb. The large breakaway of over 20 riders is coming apart on the climb, and that is the lone leader right now, Carlos Barreto of Rabobank, a guy who won stage 15 of the Vuelta a year ago, was second overall at the Clásica de San Sebastian race this year, and now storming ahead from the break by himself, where the road kicks up to almost 10%. Fans in cycling like the Basque fans.
Certainly great to be a Spaniard in the Spanish Grand Tour, and great to be back in the Basque region.
Such a deep, rich, colorful heritage for cycling in the Basque country. They feel it down deep, and they've shown it over these last couple of days as the Vuelta has returned to this region for the first time in over 3 decades. Now, just summit in the distance. What a feeling. A Spaniard leading in the Basque country on the final climb of the Vuelta.
And Barreto digging over the top. He'll have to get up to speed quickly and settle in here and try and get into a time trial mode. See if he can pick up a stage.
First rider over the final summit of this year's race, Carlos Barreto of Rabobank. Let's see what his lead is as the peloton with the top GC riders. And last check was about a minute behind.
Zip up the jersey, get a little bit more aero, get some gel in the system, and get back to business here now that he's over the top.
And here they come, led by Giox. This is roughly where Chris Froome attacked yesterday.
Yeah, let's see if we see anything out of him.
Now look at this. Just over half a minute back for these riders. Those are guys from the original breakaway that has come apart on this climb. And they're just a few seconds ahead of this group, which is the peloton, with Giox out front.
And no sign of Froome trying to do anything at this point although there is a little bit of a wind, and the road does turn around a little bit in the latter 30 miles of the bike race. So maybe there's still an opportunity for a crosswind battle, but it's going to be very tough to get back those 13 seconds.
The largest crowd you'll ever see, 46K away from the finish line.
See the police there pushing the spectators out of the course.
Welcome back, Vuelta a Espana. And Barreto has extended his lead over the peloton to 1.5 minutes. So other riders within half a minute, but the main field of GC riders, 1:37 back here as they crest the summit of the final climb of this year's Vuelta. So everybody up and over. Carlos Barreto, still the leader on the road with just over 45K left to go. Still a group of 7 riders from the breakaway earlier today giving chase, trying to reel in Carlos Barreto because now they're starting to think about a stage win.
And once again, they're starting to look just a little bit disorganized there. Maybe still trying to sort out exactly how motivated they are to work together. The blue car is actually a neutral support vehicle. It's Shimano neutral technical support, and they'll service any rider from any team because they don't have team vehicles behind that group. And it looks like one of the motorcycles down.
So the riders passing along on the right-hand side.
It's this massive moving city every single day. Hundreds of vehicles. All the press, the marshals, the officials, medics, everybody. Sometimes they have problems like that.
The race just now entering the province of Alava in the Basque Country, headed towards the capital of Vitoria, and they'll get there in just inside of 39 kilometers. Carlos Barreto, our lone leader, taking the opportunity to have a hit of the Powerade as the chasing group of 7 is trying to gain on him. However, they're losing time. Peloton also slipping a little bit further back, but it's the chasers who are more concerned about Barreto than the Peloton is right now. Carlos Sastre, the 2008 Tour de France champion for Geox and leader of the Peloton right now, still riding relatively comfortably. Denis Minchov, 2-time Vuelta winner, right behind him. This is the field of the red jersey. Chris Froome just about out of chances now. J.J. Kobo sitting right behind him in the red jersey. And for Kobo, has to be breathing a little bit easier now that all the climbs are done and there's really no genuine opportunities the remainder of today's stage for Froome to do anything about taking back those 13 seconds. So Kobo has to be feeling pretty good, even though he was nervous coming into the stage.
Yeah, and Froome right at the beginning of the day said really most of the Vuelta's over, but he's really enjoyed the support and the passion in the Basque Country for cycling, and he thinks it's just really positive for the sport, and he hopes he'll see more bike races in this region of Spain.
These are the 7 chasers behind the leader, Carlos Barreto. Are just inside the final 40K here. So with the GC and the podium all but decided, the red jersey on the shoulders of J.J. Kobo, a stage win is up for grabs here on the final Saturday at the Spanish Grand Tour. So it's a long time trial for Carlos Barreto now. Very difficult on flat roads for one man to stay away for this long. Over 40 kilometers that he'll have to maintain his lead if he's going to hang on for the stage win. Has that 7-man group that's chasing him from the day's original breakaway of 26, and then the field behind with the GC riders. As they come up on the final 30 kilometers, Christophe Lemabel leading the chase for Garmin Cervelo. Amitz Chiruka just pulling off there for Euskaltel, and now we're back to the front of the peloton with Leopard Trek and Geox.
And isn't it just so interesting to see how climbs are different from day to day. Yesterday, a Category 2 climb, we only had 20 guys left in the field at the finish. Today, a Category 1, and the field is much larger.
On the field now gaining. So they picked up some time in a hurry here as the 7-man group is about to be caught. So the gaps we were given a few moments ago were a little bit off because these boys have been swallowed up by the field. Now we got a big group behind Barreto with 30 kilometers left, and the Cofidis rider going off the front.
And no real concern by the field. It looks like Cofidis rider is actually going to sit up on his own possibly here.
Now his teammate Dennis Menchov, or I should say David Moncoutier, now has wrapped up the King of the Mountains crown with all of the climbs having been completed. So Moncoutier, it's official, a record 4th consecutive King of the Mountains crown at the Vuelta a Espana. Back to our leader, Carlos Barreto. And now just a 33-second lead over the field with under 30K left to ride on stage 20. This is stage 20 of the Vuelta a Espana. Carlos Barreto, our lone leader, with 21 kilometers left to go on the stage. Earlier, he was part of a breakaway of 26 riders. It came apart on the final climbs of the day, and Barreto got clear over the final climb that topped out just over 46 kilometers from the finish as they make their way towards the Basque capital of Vitoria today. Second consecutive day in the Basque country of north-central Spain, as the Tour of Spain returns to this region for the first time since 1978. Here is the main field. Within about a half minute of Barreto, Leopard Trek leading the way. A white jersey of Chris Froome sitting 4th wheel. And he's sitting second in the general classification, 13 seconds behind the red jersey of J.J. Cobo.
Shocker of all shockers, I did not see Cobo on his wheel for the first time in the race in several days.
Carlos Barreto, meantime, has extended his lead a little bit to 46 seconds over the field as Barreto hopes to pick up Rabobank's first stage win at this year's race and become the 14th different team to win a stage.
And this Vuelta set a record. 10 days in a row, a guy from a different country won every single time. That's never happened in a race before.
Riders from 12 different countries have won stages. 10 different first-time Grand Tour stage winners at this year's Vuelta. 9 different overall leaders. 13 different teams so far. It has been a wide open and thrilling in a lot of ways. Leopard Trek got the early thrills by winning on day 1 with the team time trial. And now hoping to position Daniela Bonatti for a sprint win at the end of today's stage. Bonatti has just missed out on a few occasions, even when he was being led out by Fabian Cancellara, his teammate, who has since pulled out of the race. Now 20K left to go for our leader, Barreto. Now Froome has continued to ride near the front, but no legitimate opportunities left for him to really take back time. And for my money, that's why you got to have either an individual time trial or a summit finish on the final weekend. You got to have some moment where you can allow that final general classification battle to take place. And here is Chris Froome coming to the
attacking.
On the
Cobo
flat.
on the wheel. Cobo on the
attacking
wheel.
with J.J. Cobo just behind him.
This is a little bit of a crosswind here at the lake, Steve, so he's trying to take advantage of that, but he really needs to get his team to line it up, put the whole field in the gutter, and try and split Cobo off.
It's just going to be so hard for him to get away from J.J. Cobo here. And now one of the Geox riders is coming up the left-hand side. Froome gave it a go, but
Carlos Sastre here going for it. Indeed it is.
Sastre, yeah.
Yeah, really, I mean, I think Froome, whenever you're by a lake like this, it allows the wind to pick up, and so you can get a little bit of crosswind, but you got to get your whole team up there, put it in the gutter, and try and really make it a battle.
Yeah, attacking by yourself makes it so hard. Cobo's right there, and he responded just like he did yesterday. This man still leading Carlos Barreto, but going back to my original point, to have a time trial or some kind of summit finish on the final weekend. It gives you something to look forward to and something to really give you some final closure if you're going to have a parade on the final day like we have tomorrow in Madrid. But these last few days, it's been relatively pedestrian and innocuous in terms of the terrain. So while Froome has still tried, there haven't been those genuine chances to get away from J.J. Cobo. It's been extremely difficult.
Well, and even, I mean, you're mentioning that if they're going to have a parade on the final day, even if it's not a parade for the first 20 or 30K, there's still no topography there to break it up. They're obviously going to race very hard for the stage win, but as we've seen, it's hard to get away from somebody on a flat day. When Cobo has one guy to watch, it's not that tough for him to mark Froome.
But for a race like the Vuelta, similar to the Giro, where you're trying to gain in prestige and popularity and you're creating newer and bolder courses, why not put a big summit finish on the final Saturday, or maybe an individual time trial, something to really allow a rider who's chasing the lead to take back some substantial time.
Yeah, it is nice to, you know, on the Friday or the Saturday to throw in the TT or the summit finish, or if it's not a summit finish, something with a little bit more really defining topography than we've had these last couple of days. Yesterday was close. I mean, it was fairly hard. There were only 20 guys in that group. It wasn't like it was 100 men coming to the line. But
then we also saw how relatively easily J.J. Cobo stayed on the wheel of Chris Froome over the summit of that last climb.
But they're both the two strongest guys, so what are you going to do?
Well, that's the thing. You got to do something to break that up, and maybe a steep summit finish would do that. Our last summit finish at Peña came in the middle of this final week, so these last few days have been very difficult for Froome to take back any time. And this man trying to gain time at the front of this stage, Carlos Barreto of Rabobank. Looked like it was going to be that way. J.J. Cobo made it thrilling, and you cannot deny it was one of the greatest singular one-days of racing we've seen all year.
Sure, but the guys can't do a summit finish, you know,
I understand that
too many times.
Right, I understand that. Move one of those to this Saturday before the final day. That's all you got to do.
Move the Peña to Friday or Saturday.
Right, or maybe the Angleroo, whatever the case may be, as Carlos Sastre comes through here at 17 seconds back of Barreto. Now the field will come through, but just give me that one final summit finish on the second to last day. That's all I ask.
You really want it.
Now Gioc sprinting.
Oh, and look at this.
Brad
Wiggins now.
Yeah, Wiggins trying to go for the sprint bonuses, but Gioc's countering there. So Brad Wiggins sitting third on the general classification at 141 back of J.J. Cobo. Surprise sprint there. And a couple of Cobo's Gioc's teammates trying to sprint with him. Looks like Wiggins rolled through there first. J.J. Cobo a couple of wheels back, and Froome was on the wheel of Cobo. We come back to the two leaders. Carlos Barreto in front, and Carlos Sastre sitting on his wheel. 33 seconds ahead of the field, with just over a dozen kilometers left to go on stage 20 as they ride toward the Basque capital of Vitoria.
Sastre and Barreto, excuse me, clinging to a 35-second advantage with 12K to go.
Leopard Trek now with four riders coming to the front as they'll try to set up their sprinter Daniela Bonatti to get that elusive stage win that he has coveted but missed out on so far at this year's race. Brad Wiggins ahead of Chris Froome, who was just ahead of the red jersey, J.J. Cobo.
Bonatti has spent a day in the race leader's red jersey after the second day of racing, but he has not won the stage yet.
We come back for the finish of stage 20. 7 kilometers left to go, and Carlos Sastre is our lone leader. He has attacked Carlos Barreto. Here comes the field, single file. Furious behind, led by Astana and Leopard Trek. But Barreto has been dropped he should just be a few seconds ahead of this group right here. And there he is on the left-hand side of the road. So he's been picked up by them. The only man left out front of this group is Carlos Sastre.
Well, a massive effort by the Spaniard. Sastre has not won a stage of a Grand Tour since his 2-stage victories in the 2009 Giro d'Italia. He's going big here, but this is going to take a superhuman effort to stay away.
Only result of any significance this season was 3rd overall at the recent Tour of Austria. And Sastre, with his teammate, leading the overall race, Jacobo. Sastre, the 2008 Tour de France champion, now late in his career, hoping for a little home tour glory on the second to last day of racing. For this Geox team that has really had an unfortunate season, not being invited to the Tour, didn't meet expectations at the Giro d'Italia. Both Sastre and Menchov, the 2 leaders of the team, crashed in training back in the spring. They were both sick at various times. So now to come back for Sastre to try and get this stage win, for Geox to win the team classification, and the overall with Jacobo, this would certainly put the exclamation point on their season.
Really a dominating performance by the team that started out a little bit under the radar in this race, but Kobo just really has been shining for the last 10 days. And Sastre, those stages he won in the Giro were summit finishes. We're not used to seeing him going solo on a flat run-in. This is very unusual.
But just 14 seconds behind for this group, Leopard Trek is serious at the front. Bonatti has been so close on multiple occasions. And while he's worn the red jersey, what he really wants is a stage victory. A chance today and tomorrow with the sprint into Madrid. But Carlos Sastre hanging on.
He sits 20th in the general classification, but right now the kilometers tick by so incredibly slowly. When you're off the front, you know the field is charging behind you, and you're trying desperately to hold on, and a spectator's trying to take you out in the process.
Well, not necessarily known as a great individual time trialist, but remember the TT he put in at the 2008 Tour de France to actually help him win that race. He's going to have to summon some of those skills here to stay away.
Yeah, those skills and maybe a little bit more, but Sastre has been very motivated the last handful of days. He's been very proud of the team.
5K left. 14 seconds at the last kilometer. And they picked up 4 seconds in 1 kilometer of racing.
Looks like there's a little bit too much road here for Sastre to stay away.
Now remember, a 90-degree right-hand turn at 2K left to go, roundabout inside of 1K, but then straight and flat for the final 700 meters. That's what's ahead.
Don't look back, Carlos. Just keep the hammer down, focus, drill it, and look at the crowds.
Into the Basque capital of Vitoria. Leopard Trek leading the field. Coming up on the leader, Carlos Sastre.
And Maxime Monfort driving the chase right now for his team sprinter, Bonatti.
Monfort has been a guy battling in the top 10 of the general classification for the majority of this Vuelta, but right now for Leopard Trek, it's all about the stage win here. No other teams besides Astana and Leopard so far have helped out in the chase. And here they all come with 4K now left to go.
Sastre just holding on to a handful of seconds. They have him dead in their sights.
Final day of climbing with 4 ascents in the rearview mirror. Another hot one with temperatures over 100 degrees. That's been the story of this year's Vuelta. The unrelenting heat. And now they're trying to summon the energy for a sprint here on the final Saturday. And they're coming up on the final 3 kilometers of racing. Sastre at the top of the screen, the field at the bottom. Just seconds separating them after 4 hours in the saddle.
115 miles the distance today. Sastre still trying to hold on, but he only has about 3 or 4 seconds.
Now remember all the top sprinters we lost earlier in the Vuelta. Tyler Farah, Mark Cavendish, Matt Goss, Tom Bonin has pulled out. So a lot of the marquee names not here to contest what looks like a field sprint at the end of stage 20.
And another man who's been shut out of the sprints is Alessandro Patacchi, and I haven't seen him in the group of chasers.
Lampre had 3 men in the breakaway earlier today, and Patacchi really has been anonymous throughout this race. Teammate Francesco Gavazzi got the win a couple of days ago for Lampre's first victory. 3K banner, and here they come. Just about a second or two behind Carlos Sastre.
Carlos needs a miracle right now. He needs something crazy to happen in the peloton, and for somehow these guys to get disorganized and stop chasing. Sastre just about picked up, and let's not forget 2 points separating Joaquim Rodriguez and Bok Mollema in the points classification, and the points go 15 places deep on this day.
And they have officially brought him back. So nobody left out front. The field is the lead.
Espana really throwing in hard here for their Italian Gasparotto.
And now we'll move Coach 2K. There's going to be that 90-degree right-hand turn coming up shortly, and here it is. At the 2K banner, quick step out front. Now the quick step rider trying to launch the move here with 2K left to go, but not getting away.
Everybody strung out. This is where things really start to hot up.
It was Leopard and Astana leading the way, but now a little bit of a split at the front because it's all single file and they're flying along.
We can't forget about the general classification battle. Can Froome somehow pick up a couple of seconds over Kobo?
Easily through the roundabout. And another roundabout coming inside the final kilometer. Over 60 kilometers per hour. Leopard Trek back to the front, riding for Bonatti.
They have done the lion's share of the pacemaking here in the last hour of the bike race, putting everything on Bonatti. He's won before, but he's been shut out in this year's Vuelta. It's very frustrating for him.
Several different teams bringing riders to the front. They sense there's a chance for a freelance opportunity for a sprinter here. As they hit the red kite, this is the final kilometer of racing. Here's that roundabout that they have to navigate, and it's going to go straight and flat from here to the finish now. Pederson at the bottom of the screen trying to come up for liquid gas. He may be a little bit too far behind. We'll have to wait and see. Leopard Trek has 3 of the first 4. Here comes Burrito up the right-hand side in the green jersey. Hausler for Garmin Cervelo was about 4 wheels back. Gasparotto up the left for Astana, but a show of force by Leopard Trek for Bonatti. He's coming up the middle in the final few hundred meters. Did he go too early, though? We'll have to see as they bring it home on stage 20. The sprint on the flat roads into Vittoria. They're now spread out across the line. Bonatti with Gasparotto on his wheel.
Yes.
Daniela Bonatti up the middle, and Bonatti locks it down on stage 20 to get the win ahead of Gasparotto.
He gets it. Astana to no avail.
Bonatti finally gets the coveted win on stage 20 here at the Vuelta. Astana and Leopard Trek were the only teams that worked at the front. And Leopard Trek finally had it pay off for them. As Daniele Bonatti comes through with the victory, his 4th ever Vuelta individual stage win, and his 4th victory of this season as well. Now Bonatti has been one of the strongest sprinters at this year's race, but the dynamics of some of the stage finishes haven't necessarily worked out in his favor.
And Bonatti goes first from second wheel. Gasparotto, though, just gapped off. Doesn't even have the speed to stay on the wheel in the draft. An easy victory for Bonatti.
Will turn 31 years old at the end of this month. Won the points jersey of the Vuelta 4 years ago. And a guy who started his career as a leadout man for Mario Cipollini.
One of the greatest sprinters in the business.
A lot of Italian sprinters often start out as a leadoff man for someone like a Cipollini or a Pataki. And the Lion King was the man that Bonatti served as the apprentice for. And a good way to learn how to handle a field sprint.
Bonatti's picked up 5 wins this season previous to this, including a couple of them in July. So we knew that his sprinting form was coming up pretty good. This will be a 49th professional career win for the Italian.
The Spanish capital of Madrid is the scene for the final day of the Grand Tour cycling season. The Vuelta a España began some 3 weeks ago, a race over 2,000 miles that started in southeastern Spain with a team time trial in Benidorm and then proceeded clockwise around the country of Spain.
A race chock full of summit finishes, but those early summit finishes wouldn't shape the general classification as much as stage number 10, where Chris Froome in Salamanca will get second on the day, but move into the overall lead.
And then from there, the race proceeded into northwestern Spain, and the climbing really got intense. This is where the definition to the general classification really became crystallized with some of these big climbs up in Asturias.
Especially stage number 15 to the Alto de Anglerú, won by Juan Jose Cobo, and it moved him into the overall lead, taking that away from Bradley Wiggins.
And then maybe the most exciting day of the Grand Tour season, the summit finish at Peña Cabarga, won by Froome, but second on the day was Cobo, preserving his red jersey that he will now wear for the 6th day into Madrid. He's to stroll into the Spanish capital and stride into his first ever Grand Tour title at the age of 30. This was earlier, rolling out of the start at an auto racing circuit just north of Madrid, but headed towards the capital of Spain and the end of the race. This is Chris Froome in the white jersey for Team Sky, sitting second in the combined classification to J.J. Cobo, who wears the red as the overall race leader. The riders coming into the center of Madrid, entering the Spanish capital with just over 70 kilometers left to go on the final stage of racing at the Vuelta. And they are about to enter a circuit that will be 5.7 kilometers in length. They'll do 11 laps, finish the stage on the 12th time over the finish line itself. And the circuit begins with just over 62 kilometers left to go to the end of stage 21.
Coming into the start of today, Juan Jose Cobo was really talking about how this race was not over till he crossed the finish line. He's got his whole team lined up on the front just in case Chris Froome wants to try and do anything a little bit early.
Chris Froome, the only man within a minute and a half of J.J. Cobo. After 20 days of racing, trailing by 13 seconds, but it might as well be 13 minutes today, and there are just no opportunities to take back that time. And it's been holding steady at 13 for the last few days, and with 4 climbs on the profile of each of the last 2 stages, Froome tried to get away. He attacked and didn't give up. It wasn't a defensive posture that he assumed, and let's give him credit for trying, but J.J. Cobo equally adept at defending. He was right on his wheel every time.
And it's really, once you get into that position, it's a little bit easier to defend than it is to get the time. David Moncoutier here, 4th consecutive year that he has won the mountains classification in the Vuelta a España, and that's never been done before.
He said he was going to call an end to his Grand Tour career after the Tour de France this year. Now he says he's going to come back and do the Vuelta again next year.
That's just craziness. Crazy talk.
J.J. Cobo with his Geox team at the front, and for Geox, what a team triumph this is. A squad that wasn't invited to the Tour de France this year had a disappointing Giro. Their 2 other leaders, Carlos Sastre and 2-time Vuelta winner Denis Menchov, had a disappointing spring campaign, crashing, getting hit with some illnesses. So it was a very disappointing run up to the Vuelta. Then Sastre and Menchov struggle in the first week. It looks like it's going to be another disaster for this team, and all of a sudden they are saved by the 30-year-old J.J. Cobo, who wasn't even a designated leader coming in, and now he's about to win this team's first Grand Tour.
Pretty impressive the way the team actually reorganized themselves. Cobo talked about how it was such a surprise to have this victory almost in his gap. grasp, and he came in with the idea of helping Dennis and Carlos, but they had to figure out how to change things out as the race went on, and he was feeling better and better, and he took advantage of that.
And I think when you look back at the overall story arc of this race, that's going to be one of the keys to why Cobo is able to win, because both he and Chris Froome, the top two on the GC, did not come in as their team's GC leaders. But while Sastre and Menchov struggled in the first week, that gave Cobo more freedom to ride for himself, to pull away at the front, to ride for stage wins in time. Meanwhile, Froome, on the other hand, had to ride for Wiggins because Brad Wiggins was always near the front. He was up there climbing with the best of them, so Froome had to stick to that role of domestique longer than Cobo did, and that really played into Cobo's hands.
It certainly did. Remember, both of those guys, both the Sky Riders as well as Cobo, they all had a bad team time trial the first day, losing over 40 seconds, but it was basically about the same amount of time lost for both teams.
And now coming in to start the circuits around Madrid. Spanish capital, third largest city in all of Europe behind London and Berlin, and the traditional ending point for the Vuelta a Espana. Tail end of the main field in the middle of Madrid. A few riders trying to get off the front as we are still waiting for the first breakaway of any kind to form. But on a flat final circuit like the one we have in Madrid, you may see a breakaway, but they're not going to get much time, and chances are they're not going to make it to the finish.
It only happens about once every 20 or 30 Grand Tours that a breakaway will stay away on the final day.
Liquigas with several riders near the front. The team of the defending Vuelta champion from last year, Vincenzo Nibali, who was consistent in the first half of the race. He was always up there in the top 5, but really faded when the big mountains arrived in northwestern Spain.
Really, about the last half of the race, things were not looking so good for Vincenzo Nibali. He's coming today down in 7th place. His director saying not really sure exactly why he didn't have better legs.
They may get a stage win today, though, with Pederson, the youngest rider in the race at 21. He's already won 2 stages and going for the hat trick today in his first ever Grand Tour. And Liquigas poised for a remarkable achievement. They are set to finish their 9th consecutive Grand Tour with all 9 riders. Think about that. The last 3 years, 9 straight Grand Tours, everybody has finished. All 9 riders, not one has dropped out in the last 3 years. That's truly remarkable.
It's an extraordinary accomplishment because it means that, first of all, they're united, but second of all, they've been able to make it through illness. They've never had a crash that's taken anybody out, which is hard to imagine. And they've continued to put it together 9 consecutive times.
They are crossing the finish line for the stage for the first time. This is the first of 12 times across the line. And this officially begins the circuits. 11 laps altogether around the 5.7K course.
A lot of action right now with various riders trying to break off the front of the field.
Liquigas, Quickstep, Astana, and Cofidis among the teams up here.
Valerio Agnoli, the last man in the group on the front here for Liquigas Cannondale. He also has a teammate in there.
This is our Road ID stage profile. Riders still relatively early in the stage and very flat all day long. One of the tight turnarounds they have. There are a few technical corners on the course, and once they come around on the final lap, they'll see that big turnaround at 3K to go and also at the 1K mark, and also have a hard right-hander at 2K to go. But they'll, of course, do that many different times leading up to that final lap of racing. Still over 60 kilometers left to go on today's final stage. Back of the field, trailing a three-man group out front by just inside of a minute. Saxo Bank and Lampre, the teams leading the field. Crossing the finish line area for the 5th time. They'll cross over 12 times in total. Saxo Bank, the team of sprinter JJ Hayedo, who's won a stage, and Lampre, the team of sprinter Alessandro Batacchi, who has so far been shut out.
Hard to imagine when Hayedo won stage 16 for Saxo Bank. It was the first time he had won a Grand Tour stage. In fact, the first Argentinian to win a Grand Tour stage.
12 different countries in all have had a rider win a stage at this year's race. Sometimes when you think about all the first-time winners and the various teams and countries and leaders that dominate the podium, it can be misleading because sometimes it's just the dynamics of the race, what type of stage it is, and who it suits the best. But this year it has been really a true yardstick for how wide open this race has been from start to finish. With the riders now just inside of 40K left to the finish of the race.
We've never had a Grand Tour that we've gone 10 consecutive days with a guy from a different country winning every day. It's happened 3 times before, 9 times in a row, but never 10.
And for most of the race, you had the GC changing almost every day. Maybe just subtle changes here and there, but every day seconds were being added or subtracted. And it's not really until the last several days of this final week that things have really settled in, with all of the summit finishes having been completed. And of course, the only long individual time trial was way back on stage 10.
And these big 180-degree turns, a lot easier to navigate when you're in a 3-man breakaway group, because you don't have that accordion effect that you get back in the peloton. The peloton, the first few guys hit it, nice full speed. Everybody else gets all stuffed up like a big traffic jam on the freeway, and then they have to sprint back up to speed out of it. So it's actually quite hard at the back of the peloton.
Today, the only day that's really not about hard racing. It's a coronation, a procession, the proverbial parade into the capital of the country that hosts the race. Really more about atmosphere and pageantry than anything. A chance for the fans to come out and really celebrate the Vuelta. And the organizers this year really designed the final couple of days to be that way. Of course, Madrid and the final day is always like that. But these last couple of days going back to the Basque Country of north central Spain for the first time in over 3 decades, where some of the most passionate fans in cycling anywhere in the world reside. A chance for them to see the race. And there weren't any summit finishes or really tough climbs, but a chance for them to really see their home Grand Tour for the first time in 33 years, experience the spectacle. So these last 3 days of this year's Vuelta have really been about the celebration of this race in the sport.
And the fans just came out in droves. They absolutely love having the Vuelta back in the Basque Country, and there were so many of them to see one of their hometown heroes, Igor Anton, pick up the stage win a couple of days ago. Truly phenomenal experience for him. He said he will never forget that day as long as he lives.
These are our 3 leaders, who now have a margin of only 22 seconds. Alberto Benitez of Andalusia leading him through this hard left-hand turn. So the gap coming down considerably now. Had hovered near a minute. Well down under half a minute now as you see the field on the other side of the road. And riding near the front, the red jersey of JJ Kobo, who went into last weekend trailing on the general classification by just about a minute and a half. 2 days later, he had a 20-second lead. The defining 2 days of his career to this point, as Lampre puts in a dig on the front of the field.
Yeah, things are really starting to hot up at the front of the field right now. Batacchi obviously wants this one badly.
And Daniele Bonatti wants to go back-to-back, too. So Leopard and Lampre, they try to trade punches here in the final kilometers. It was the Angleroo, where JJ Kobo rode up into the mist away from Wiggins and Froome, soloed into the stage win in the time bonus, and then a few days later on the Peña Cabarga, Froome attacking him, dropping Kobo, and he saved the red jersey, saved really his career as he pulled him back, almost won the stage, but stayed on Froome's wheel as Chris Froome won just ahead of J.J. Cobo.
It really looked like Cobo was going to crack that day. When Froome put in that attack and Cobo popped, it looked like it was over. Froome immediately opened the gap, but somehow Cobo got his head screwed on straight, took a deep breath, and got his composure and clawed back up to Froome. Amazing battle that day. Everybody
had to be thinking at that point when Cobo got dropped that, all right, this is it. Because he has that history of not being focused, of having to not be able to handle the pressure, crumbling under the expectations. So everybody plus himself had to all be thinking, uh-oh, this is one of those moments. He's not going to rise up and meet the occasion. But, boy, he did in a big way. And your body is yelling at you at such a high volume in that situation. Your legs hurt so bad. Your lungs are about to explode. But Cobo said it was really the fans that helped propel him, that gave him that inner strength to regain his strength and pull back Froome and actually pass him before the finish. But then Froome came by one last time. Now, what's so ironic about J.J. Cobo, earlier this season, if you go back to the month of April, he abandoned the Vuelta Asturias in April. Not only left the race, but then quit training. He was so discouraged. But the Asturias region of Spain is where his career resurgence took place at the Vuelta. That's where it's really become defined, because that's where the Angleroo is, where he won, where he saved it on the Peña Cabarga against Froome. So, boy, the deep, rich irony of quitting the Vuelta Asturias earlier this season, and just a few months later, his career is going to be remembered for what he did in Asturias. And I really wonder what we're going to see out of Cobo the next couple of years. We'll see how much momentum he gains from this. The breakaway now looking like things are getting a little bit tougher for them as the field's starting to bring him back. Harash now has gone on the attack on his own. Now with the break about to get caught, the move had to be made. So Harash, the Spaniard for Katusha, pushing on out front. His teammate, Joaquim Rodriguez, still in that battle for the points competition, wearing the green jersey. Three-man breakaway has come apart here in the last half of stage 21. And Harash doesn't look like he's going to give this much of an effort. There's not a lot of places for him to go when you're out by yourself like this. The huge field right behind you, breathing down your neck. 10th time through, that means 2 more laps. Saxo Bank, Lampre, Leopard, Giox, among the teams out front. And Harash still hanging on as the lone man, just seconds ahead of that charging field. Hook 'em horns, baby. Hook 'em horns. Road ID stage profile coming down to the final 10 kilometers or so, all flat around Madrid on the shortest day of racing here at this year's Vuelta a Espana. And Joaquim is what we're looking at in the final lap. One more field sprint for a stage win up for grabs, and the points competition coming down to the wire. Joaquim Rodriguez wearing the green jersey as the leader, even though he is tied on points with Bok Mollema. But Rodriguez leads because he's had the higher stage finishes over the course of the race. And J.J. Haedo has his Saxo Bank team all over the front right now. Haedo picking up stage number 16. He wants to see if he can get stage 21 as well. Who's going to time it just right? So many of the top sprinters have pulled out of the Vuelta throughout these last 3 weeks, so it's a watered-down field. You don't have their typical lead-out trains in place. Some guys are freelancing off of other wheels that they're not familiar with, so it could be wide open as to who's going to take this final day in Madrid. Winners the last 3 years in the Madrid Sprint, not in this year's race at this point. Tyler Farah, Andre Greipel, and Matty Breschel. Last winner of a Madrid Sprint who is in the field, Daniela Bonatti, won here in 2007, and ironically enough was also the winner on stage 20 in the sprint yesterday. Now tries to make it consecutive wins to finish off the Spanish Grand Tour. And notice there are no riders from Lampre in the pink and blue on the front for Pataki anymore. He burned up all his guys chasing that 3-man move. And
Now he may have to freelance things off of the other leadouts.
He's done it before, but he's a guy who is very comfortable getting that lead out, likes to have it. Alessandro Patacchi has not won a race since stage 2 of the Giro d'Italia this year, so it's been a long dry spell for him. Leopard Trek now riding hard for Bonatti. Garnet Cervello moving up for Heinrich Hausler.
Stuart O'Grady on the front. Doesn't even look like he's going to sit down for this pole. The whole thing just out of the saddle, just drilling it right now. The legs obviously don't have a lot of freshness left, so he's just putting everything into this final pull.
Guys dropping off the back.
Bunch of guys getting popped off the back here as the speed really picking up. At this point, a lot of guys don't have that high end anymore. They're ground up by being in the mountains for so many days.
Should be the 3K mark, and indeed it is. Big left-hand turnaround. We'll face another one just like this at the Red Kite with 1 kilometer to go, but before that, a pretty hard right-hander at 2K left. Not as severe as what they're navigating right now, but still another technical turn coming 1 kilometer from this point.
Oh, Grady looking around his shoulder here, trying to see just exactly what's going on behind him. They do still have the benefit of the race radio in their ear, but sometimes it's good to have a look. Sometimes you just can't hear everything.
So much of this is about timing, setting up, and executing a plan. And when you haven't done a lot of sprints over the course of a 3-week race, your timing and your rhythm may not be in sync. You may not be as sharp as you typically would be if you had more sprints under your belt. So we'll see if that impacts the riders here in the next 3K. Leopard and Liquigas at the front. Liquigas again trying to set it up for a 3rd stage win for young Peter Sagan, the youngest man in the Vuelta.
Patacchi's moving up into about 4th wheel there. The pink colors of Lampre, so he has still managed to salvage a good position, even though he has no teammates around him.
2K left. So they'll make another hard left-hand turn. Just about 1 kilometer left to go when they'll see the Red Kite. And now almost single file at the front as the speed is really taking off.
Looks like a Liquigas Cannondale rider pulling off the front. It's Leopard Trek on the front with a bunch of guys there.
Leopard, Lampre, Saxo Bank is still up there as well.
That's actually Patacchi in 2nd position, so he's a little far forward at this point.
And Bonatti is behind him, but now Patacchi looking around, taking stock of where everybody is. Brad Wiggins is up there near the front as well. Sagan moving back up for Liquigas. And there is the Red Kite. There's the hard left-hand turn. 1 kilometer left to go in the Grand Tour cycling season, and it's going to come down to the field sprint in Madrid. Leopard still leading it out. Patacchi's 2nd wheel. Sagan a few wheels back. Lloyd Mondery is there for AG2R in the top 6. Brad Wiggins in the top 10. And single file at the front. Will Patacchi finally get a stage win? Will Bonatti go back-to-back? Will Sagan get the hat trick?
Still have to think that Patacchi is too far forward. There you go. The lead out stops. Now Patacchi's in the front, but he can't start sprinting yet.
Bonatti right behind him, then Sagan behind him. Lee Howard is there for HTC High Road. And now the sprint coming on the left-hand side from Skill Shimano and Quick Step.
So they all got jumped when Patacchi wouldn't go. A total reset at the front.
But Patacchi is still there in about 4th wheel coming up on the left-hand side. But Skill Shimano with 2 riders there as Patacchi pulls up on the left. He's got Bonatti on his wheel. Bonatti in a good position as they sprint up the middle of the road now. It's Patacchi, Sagan, and Bonatti. And at the end, it looks like it's going to be Sagan just ahead of Bonatti. Patacchi gets 3rd. And JJ Cobo finishes in the red jersey as the winner of the Vuelta. But the hat trick for the youngster Sagan.
The only man to win 3 stages. A great finish for him in his first Grand Tour.
The youngest man in the race wins 3 stages in his first ever Grand Tour. J.J. Cobo wins his first ever Grand Tour overall title. And we're back with the post-race report presented by SRAM right after this on Universal Sports. A very close sprint between Peter Sagan, Alessandro Patacchi, and yesterday's winner, Daniele Bonatti. And it is Sagan by inches, getting his 3rd stage win of the race.
Patacchi out in front, Bonatti on his wheel, and Sagan on the left. But look at the speed of Sagan as he rides by everybody right at the line. Bonatti unofficially 2nd there, and Patacchi in 3rd. But it was very close at the line.
Just by a wheel, Peter Sagan gets the win.
Patacchi going maybe just a teeny bit early. He had no lead-out men left. He was trying to get his timing right. They got swarmed a little bit in the sprint, and then he had to come from behind. But Sagan was the man that had the final kick to get his 3rd stage win and his 14th win of the year.
Peter Sagan on the podium in front of the Plaza de Cibeles in Madrid as the winner of stage 21 in a sprint just ahead of Daniele Bonatti and Alessandro Patacchi. The youngest rider in the race wins for the 3rd time at this year's Vuelta. Last year, it was his Liquigas Cannondale teammate, Vincenzo Nibali, standing on the podium as the winner of the race. Nibali, a disappointing defense of his title this year, but the bright spot for this Liquigas Cannondale team, no doubt, the 21-year-old Slovakian.
He's had an incredible season. We've talked about how he's won 14 races this year. Well, many of those have been very high profile. Obviously, 3 wins in his first Grand Tour. Those would be the highest profile of all.
May have won 4 stages had it not been for the roundabout confusion where he went the wrong way following a rider from Leopard Trek, Robert Wagner, at the end of the stage because he was well positioned. So not like 3 isn't enough, but could have been 4.
Could have been 4. Just before the Vuelta started, he won 2 stages and the points competition at the Tour of Poland. Earlier in the year, he won a stage and the points competition at the Tour of California.
He's the type of rider who can win in different ways, not just in a straight-up field sprint like that, but on some hills, on some climbs. He's going to win a lot of races in his career.
Very versatile guy. A couple of stage wins at the Tour of Switzerland as well. The thing about him that makes him so much more potent than the typical sprinter is he can get over climbs quite well. He's not a climber, but he can survive the climbs.
That's oftentimes what it's about, just being in position to challenge, because some of the other sprinters can't do that. So if you're one of the fastest men to just survive to the finish and you find yourself in position, then you thin the herd and you give yourself a better chance to win.
Little surprise.
The winner, J.J. Cobo, with his son, who takes the red jersey himself. The toddler version of La Roja. A moment to celebrate with family and those closest to you. J.J. Cobo himself, by nature, a very quiet and shy guy. Didn't even ride a bike until the age of 15, after he had already played soccer and volleyball. Comes from an athletic family. Both his father and sister were athletes. His mother, Maribel, has come out to follow the Vuelta here in this final week. Cobo, at the age of 30, still lives with his parents, but that's culturally common in Spain. It's not unusual. It's not like he's living in their basement trying to save money. J.J. Cobo now pulling on the red jersey for the 7th different time at the Vuelta, but this one means the most. It's at the end of the race. It's in Madrid, and it's to celebrate his first Grand Tour title.
He picked up probably the most important stage victory of the entire race, up to the Angliru, stage 15. That's what put him in the jersey. He kept it all the way through, dealt with all the challengers, and his son looks a little overwhelmed up there.
3 months ago, he was on the couch, not even riding his bike, and now he wins a Vuelta that will tie for the 3rd closest margin in history.